Good evening, everybody. Welcome back then to another LFM stream for round number 6 of the Case King Pro Series, where we are at the wonderful and formidable circuit of Bathurst here at Mount Panorama. We have moved all the way from South Africa last week at Kyalami over to Australia, one of the finest race circuits around the planet. But before we get too deep into the action for this evening, let's have a bit of a think back to what we had last week at round 5. It was a blind and a very chaotic race at all of that. And it was Marco Bischoff, the two-time reigning Pro Series champion, that came out on top, took his second victory of the season, and crucially became the first repeat winner of Season 9. Now, with all of that said and put together, it just may have revitalised Marco Bischoff's championship hopes of going for 3 back-to-back-to-back titles in this Pro Series championship, because he's had a little bit of a shaky start at points, but when considering some of the misfortune for other very quick drivers like Darren McCormack, who fatally made that speeding mistake in the pit lane, got himself a stop-and-go 30-second penalty, and saw him plummet from what looked at one point to be a comfortable race lead to trying to get as far up the order as possible and barely breaking around into the 21st second positions. And Luke Whitehead, it looked like it might be his up for grabs at that point, but somehow, someway, the German took a brilliant strategy call with the overcut and came out on top. And in doing so, when we factor in everything regarding the championship points, when you look at the grand total, right now you have Luke Whitehead that is in that championship lead. Now, still, in terms of where you look at the standings on the LFM website, I do believe after this round they should be updated with Whitehead moving up into Division 1, if all of my understanding of that is correct. So I believe your net championship leader right now is Luke Whitehead. And when we also start to consider drop scores, there's 2 drop scores per driver for this season, and when we bring that into play as well, Luke Whitehead leads ahead of Grantis Karekas, George Boothby, Marco Bischoff, and then Jaroslav Honzig, of course, Jardier in hot pursuit in all of that as well. Crucially, though, Mr. Jardier, unfortunately, won't be participating in the race tonight because apparently he has better things to be doing at some fantastic event over in Sweden. So he is very disappointed, admittedly, not to be participating in tonight's race. He loved this circuit, but hopefully we will have him back for round 7 next week. But a lot of our other main championship protagonists with some other great talent that we have seen on this grid in previous races and seasons will be joining us tonight. So expect fireworks as always. If it's anything like the last time we were here at Bathurst, where Florian Duakop had a very good lead in the Mercedes, leading the way, and then on the penultimate lap coming through McPhillamy Park made a big mistake, clattered the wall on the entry to Skyline, somehow gathered it all together, and then ran with a very wounded car to the end, barely finishing ahead of the 2 cars that were closing in on him at the time, and he was able to take his one and only victory in the Pro Series. I believe he will be in this split tonight as well, and will be looking to try to maybe repeat that result, but perhaps in more calm fashion for the Mercedes driver. And speaking of all the thrills and spills that this circuit can provide, let's have a little bit of a look at this circuit in closer detail. Absolute 23 corners of madness here at this very, very demanding circuit. Through Hell Corner, and then the big climb up the hill through the mountain straight, and then into one of the trickiest corners to overtake here, because even though you get that run, if you don't have that inside line, it's very difficult to carry the speed and make the overtake. Now it goes into the most complicated winding section, very difficult to do anything up through here from turns 3 all the way to turn 10, that formidable section through Skyline, over the crest, and then down into the Dipper, and then through into Forest Elbow, and then the big drag race down the back of Conrad Straight. This is where the Porsches are going to be particularly struggling today. It's going to be another day of complications for those cars. They had a bit more freedom at Kyalami. I think they'll be coming under some pressure from the likes of the Hondas in down this section, through the chase, and then in towards 21 and 22, and then towards the final corner of Murray's. at turn 23 to round out the lap. And whilst those Porsches are likely to be very quick and agile through certain parts of this circuit, it is going to be very difficult for them to keep anybody behind them and also to make any progress through the field. So qualifying for those drivers is going to be vitally critical for them specifically. But we have seen drivers take slightly different approaches with the Porsche. Luke Whitehead, notably in that very dramatic battle at Paul Ricard when he went down that overcut strategy and it was changing conditions and he almost made it work. Unfortunately, contact at the end of the back straight saw that charge for the lead come to an end. But on that day, he was running a bit of a lower downforce setup than most of the other Porsches on circuit, and it did make his life a lot easier in terms of making progress through the field. Similar sort of strategy as well, I seem to remember, at Watkins Glen. So we'll have to see how they all play that, but of course very fast drivers of the likes of Whitehead, Carreras, Bischoff will be sporting that car, as well as the likes of, I think, Matthias Kuhn is in the field tonight. And we will, of course, have some other fantastic drivers. Qualifying will start shortly. We'll be able to make our way into the practice session, I believe, in just a moment. The server should be up in just a second, and we can have a look at our drivers getting in their final bits and pieces of practice, getting in their setups to the last bits of detail for their tyre pressures, brake ducts, you name it, and making those final crucial changes that they need to extract everything out around this incredible circuit. And of course, such a demanding circuit that you need confidence in your car, so they are going to be wanting to extract absolutely everything possible. So server is up, and I shall move us over in just a second so we can have a look at all of our drivers getting their eye in before qualifying. And also, just in the meantime, I do want to say a big thank you to everybody who has been supporting the channel recently. I do believe just before this stream that we crossed over 1,900 subscribers on the channel, so we are closing in on 2,000, which may even be possible by the end of the month, which would be absolutely incredible. So thank you everybody so much for all of the incredible support over the last few months. And as I just get the last couple of details in place, and then we should be able to have a look at our drivers making their way out on circuit for the first time and tackling this incredible mountain. See, got some drivers already going out on circuit. The BMW right now, number 34 of Pavel Labush, going, oh, that's very close over the crest. So I imagine we might see a few moments like that. We'll get it on board on his next flying lap and take us for a little bit of a tour around this incredible windy track. But it really is a circuit that keeps you on your toes, almost, I would say, arguably more than any other circuit. There is just no margin for error through this tight and twisty section over the top of the mountain, and it has overtaking opportunities with these big runs down the back straight and up the hill, but it does invite that aspect sometimes, a little bit of desperation, because those opportunities, they might be there, but they're certainly not easy to actually make happen. We saw recently with the endurance race that happened here in real life that quite clearly, whilst overtaking opportunities may be possible, that actually getting them done is another matter. So I have to see how all of these guys end up tackling that this evening. And we will go on board with Pavel in just a moment and see what it is like to go for a tour around this Bathurst race circuit. So starting lap now across the main straight towards turn 1 at Hell Corner, and then get yourself tucked into that apex. Don't clip the curb, but then you can use all of that exit curb through there. And this is another big aspect of this circuit, absolutely maximizing every single piece of track that you can, because when these margins are so tight, you want to open up the track, open up that tarmac and widen your line so you can carry all of that momentum. Now try and spot your braking point just before the 50-meter board as you're braking uphill. Would have wanted to have been tucked in a bit closer. Heard him playing around with the gears there, trying to get that swung through Griffin's Bend. Now continuing to climb up through into the cutting. and then hard on the brakes. Tricky one to spot your line through here, up close to the wall, on the power again, through in towards Quarry now. These corners come at you thick and fast, and then another blind entry into here. Tricky in race trip in particular, getting as close to the wall as you dare. I tell you what, they'll get some good free promotion on the sponsors on those barriers. Then as you ride through up in towards McPhillamy Park, big dangerous corner here. You see some drivers avoiding the curve, particularly in the Ferraris there. Open up the entry down in towards Skyline. 1 apex, 2 apex, into the third, hook it around, and then maybe another gear shift for some cars down in towards the bottom of turn 15 of the Dipper, through the next couple of kinks in towards Forest Elbow. Double braking zone here quite often. Brake through that initial apex turn in, then a little bit of a lift, and then hard on the brakes then once you straighten up the car. On the power as early as there, down Conrod Straight, and now Pavel can breathe for just a moment. And these drivers, they've got 90 minutes of this evening, so it is going to be quite the task to keep up the concentration. See, there's a little bit of extra tarmac on the run, open into the chase, helps open up that line, makes it easy flat for these GT3 cars, braking just between the 150 meter board, and then through the next couple of corners. Be careful not to run too wide on the exit there. It can be very bumpy, very similar to issues of Watkins Glen that we saw with Tinker van der Velde. If you run wide there, through in towards Murray's, rounding out the lap, and for a first effort, it is going to be a 2:03.1 for Pavel. I imagine some of those times will start to tumble. And yes, unfortunately, he is not going to be participating, Juddy 8, this evening. He has other commitments, but very exciting ones at that, and I'm sure he is having a wonderful time. But we look forward to hopefully having him back next week for round 7. Meanwhile, Sebastian Krohn in the Honda. We saw him in the Mercedes last season. He is now another one of many drivers that have made the move over to the Honda. Obviously a very competitive car. It's a car that's always run well around here, primarily because of its immense amount of power. That's a more representative time I was expecting. Michael Romagnoli into the 201s now in the Aston Martin. Great effort from him last week at Kyalami. The Italian driver did very well to get a good result out of that one. And also in this field tonight, returning to the grid, Alexander Smolia in the number 7 Honda. Watch out for that man. He is going to be mighty quick, I am sure. We've also got Robin Schwanker, man that very nearly managed to get victory at Paul Ricard, but those changing conditions made it tricky. Look at that McLaren, absolutely planted through those winding sections, close as you like to all of these concrete walls, as that is as close as you want to be getting. I think maybe a little bit of a tap there. And in qualifying, my goodness, Schwanker absolutely leaving nothing on the line there. But that is what we have in the Pro Series. These guys know that they have to push absolutely everything that they can out of these cars. A little squirrely on the exit for the McLaren there. It's stable up until a point, and a weird car under brakes as well. Tricky one to get used to if you have been driving front-engined cars for a while, because it's not so much about it being a mid-engine platform. It has a bit of an odd characteristic that's had since day one. It has a tendency to really straight line itself when under heavy braking, so you really have to master that level of brake control and trail braking through the corners as much as you can to really get the nose tucked in. But when you can get that car set up right, it can be mighty, mighty quick. Florian Duicot, the man that took victory last time we were at this circuit, the number 19 car, top of the time sheets. Tell you what though, someone's on a mighty lap at the moment. Neil Steinbrenner, 8/10. Of course, this is practice, so this may not be fully representative of what we expect in qualifying, as Schwanker goes up to the top of the timing sheets for the time being. But of course, these drivers will be wanting to feel as confident as they possibly can going into the upcoming sessions, and qualifying is going to be very important around here. Steinbrenner getting a very nice toe off the Mercedes in front of him. Some of these drivers, of course, could be out on race fuel at the moment. That's not the exit, though, that you want in the penultimate corner, but he keeps it all together. I think it might still be good enough for a very solid time. I know Florian Duicop is also on a big improvement at the moment as well. Steinbrenner does go up to the top of the timesheets. I think, though, the Mercedes driver, number 19 car, this is certainly a statement that he is about to make. I think this is looking to be the first of the times in the 2-minute mark. A little bit on the curb on the exit of Murray's corner, but by half a second and a bit more, he goes up to the top of the grid for the time being. So Duacop definitely looking to try to continue the momentum that he had from the last time we were at this race circuit. And just up ahead of him, one of the Lamborghinis might be Jonathan Clifford. No, he's another one of the Lamborghini drivers. Trying to see who else that may be. See if we can catch who is just in front of Duacop. The numbers are extremely small, unfortunately, on my viewing window, juggling all of this on a single monitor. And yes, and also some support once again in the chat for Jade Hutchinson, who at one point was our championship leader and unfortunately had a disconnect one of the rounds, which really compromised his potential chance at a championship fight. But with drop scores, he is definitely not out of the running yet, and he has shown in all the races that have gone his way that he's been able to extract some very consistent results and great pace from that Ferrari. And around here today, it's a car that could behave nicely, but it can be a tricky one to master over top of the mountain, because if the bump upsets that car, you have very little wiggle room to play with to try to recover any sort of moment in that car. We also have a very packed out grid tonight, 39 cars on this incredible Australian circuit. I'll tell you what, that's going to make lap 1 incredibly busy. Also, see a couple new liveries as Grantis Crackers and Luke Whitehead with that lovely Veloce Esports livery. Of course, recent drivers have become a part of that roster, as well as George Boothby. I think Boothby's still sporting the sister team's Yas Heat livery on his Honda. And watch out for that man as well today. Of course, always very, very quick. You can never count him out, although that's not exactly the sort of line he'll be wanting to take in qualifying or the race. And also, yes, a very good point made in terms of Valentine Barrier, the man that was leading at Paul Ricard, then made a mistake, lost it all by himself, but boy did he bounce back, taking victory at Watkins Glen, and he has been running very, very nicely in that Honda lately, in top 5 for practice. We'll have to see how that all plays out. Big margins, though, right now to Florian Duacop, so we'll have to see. And we will be into qualifying very, very shortly. 90 minutes of racing today. As previously said, we've got a 20-minute pit stop window in the middle of the circuit. And again, Forest Elbow. Very tricky corner to master. You want to carry as much momentum as you can on the exit, because then that time transpires all down Conrod Straight through the chase and towards the braking zone of turn 21. But that is not the line that you want to be doing all too often, because the damage will stack up and that will make it very difficult to extract pace out of your car. But have to see how they all fare with managing that. And lap 1, I imagine, is going to be very chaotic. Hopefully these guys in the Pro Series, incredibly talented drivers, will be able to keep it all tidy and together. But the demands of this circuit certainly put them under the maximum amount of pressure. So into qualifying we go then, as everyone starts to fly out of the pit lane for the first time. I think by the looks of it, it will be Grantis Correcus that leads them all out of the pits as they snake their way out through the exit of turn 1. There is also a small chance of some rain today as well, which could really throw a spanner in the works for some drivers. Imagine that maybe cars like the Ferraris would be hoping for a bit of rain, tend to do well in changeable conditions. Correcus gives us a lovely slide through up in towards turn 2, and I think it's going to allow Karppinen to lead the way after that moment. Get some great camera shots around here at Bathurst. Basically every corner that you look at is just a photographer's dream. And Caracas now starting to push the Finnish driver over the crest. Oh dear, I tell you what, if the drivers are pushing around this amazing circuit every single lap for 90 minutes today, I am going to be extremely out of breath by the time we finish this one. But this is what we love about the Pro Series. These drivers absolutely the best of the best on the LFM platform. They push each other to the limit, sometimes a little bit over the limit, but boy do they give us some incredible action. See, winding their way through that fantastic series of corners, Hopefully no one will be clattering that wall on this initial outlap. May see a few tags for certain drivers on their first flying lap. I'll tell you what, Korekis actually has possibly made quite a wise move here, sitting behind Carpenter, because he may have some pretty good raw pace in that car, but as we know, the Porsche is going to struggle with straight line speed. If he can get a nice toe off that number 11 car, though, that could certainly help his efforts in getting track position, and I think track position for those Porsches are going to be absolutely vital this evening. So we'll go on board. I think actual fact, let's go on board with Korekis, see what it's like from his perspective, and see if he does benefit from that toe. This man still hasn't won a race in the Pro Series, but he has been right up there with the very best in the last couple of seasons. In towards turn 1, and he goes, and that Porsche Flat 6 roaring in the back of that car. A little bit squirrely on the exit, tyres maybe taking a bit longer to get up to pressure and temperature. And this is going to be where these Porsches struggle, particularly on the inclines. And this is where the Mercedes gains a lot of its times. It has had a power nerve around here in the past, but that car does extremely well still. A huge amount of grunt and torque. You can see Mikoski right behind Korekis, gaining in that slipstream up the hill. But this is where the Porsche will start to fight back again, winding in towards the cutting now. As you dare towards that inside concrete barrier. It's not completely smooth. It doesn't exactly follow the contour of the corner, so you've got to be careful. That's one of the big issues around at Forest Elbow. We'll see on board with Korekis as he makes his way to that part of the circuit. There's a little bit of a sticking out part of the barrier, and that really is tricky to negotiate. On Albrun right now, apparently fastest car on circuit. Have to see how they all fare when they hit the timing beam for the first time. Yellow flag out for Robin Schwanker. I'm not sure if he's had an issue somewhere around the lap. He does seem to have parked it at the top of the hill, so he's already gone to the pits. Down in Forest Elbow, and there's that part of the wall that sticks out. Korekis going a bit wider than I think he would have liked in all of that, but it's been a pretty tidy effort so far. And with almost 40 cars on the circuit, other drivers barely having even started their first attempts. It's a long lap around here as well, so you have to be really careful how you time your lap through in towards the chase, bouncing over that bump. Tricky to go side by side through there if you're in a car like the Ferrari or the McLaren. Really does get upset by that bounce. Nice line though through 21 and 22 in towards Murray's corner for the first time then in qualifying for Korekis. Number 1 car, of course, most recently the number 1 man on the platform, but it's not good enough to displace the BMW of Korekis. Purple in that middle sector, off his personal best in the third. Have to see how they all fare just behind Addison, Mikoski, and Robin Schaefer in another one of the BMWs. That could be a pretty speedy car today. George Boothby, though, immediately on the pace, 2 minutes, 0.1, excuse me, for the Honda. So we may even see some 59s from these drivers. Where is Florian Duakop on circuit? Previous race winner here, as previously mentioned. And that Mercedes, I was trying to find him. I couldn't quite find him soon enough, but he has gone to the top of the timesheets. Purple in Sector 1 and Sector 2. But I have to see when he carries that pace through later on into the session, how does that translate? Will he manage to sustain the pressure of this mighty, mighty field once more? It almost came undone for him last time, but German driver has been gaining more confidence in that car over time. Tell you what though, George Boothby in that number 4 car, already a couple of tenths up. Duakop though, not looking to be outdone. He's also improving and carrying a lot of momentum on this lap. That's the issue for one of the Mercedes. Over through McPhillamy Park there, and there's a yellow flag out for the number 7 car. That was Smollier that has just gone back to the pits by the looks of it. So we'll try to see what happens to the Honda driver. They were coming over the top of the hill then, almost into the wall as it came over the crest through that very fast left-hander, over the grass. Oh, and a big moment on the entry. How did he keep that one together? Huge amounts of car control from the number 7 car, drifting his way through the rest of that series of corners. I think, unfortunately, eventually came to a stop. Couldn't quite pick him up on the camera, but my goodness, how he actually kept that out of the wall as much as he did. That is extremely impressive. Florian Duakop abandoned his last lap. Meanwhile, George Boothby still on his. He's been a bit back and forth on the Delta. So we're into the penultimate corner now, and he has backed out of that effort, so he's going for another flying lap. Tell you what though, Manos Gerardis 6/10 up on his lap time and was purple for a moment, clipping the wall though on the exit of Forest Elbow. And that is certainly going to hamper his straight line speed. In actual fact, let's get a little bit of an idea of what some of these cars are doing down this back stretch. You see both on the heads-up display in the car and also on the overlay. It's about 280, 281, up to 283 kilometers an hour for the BMW. Possibly a little bit more for some of our other drivers. Of course, that's Common exit. Valentin Barry, the Frenchman, doing very nicely there. Almost into the 59s. I'll tell you what though, maybe George Boothby, again, quick in this opening sector. Seems to be where he's got a lot of time in that car. He's got on board with this Honda as he flies through over the crest of these next few apexes. Undulating all the time, so much commitment. Twitch on the steering wheel, that's not what you want. And he has lost a chunk of time there in towards McPhillamy Park. Easy through there, down towards Skyline traffic out the way. Might distracted Boothby a little bit though, that's scruffy. And I think that is going to lose him some time there, and it has. And he may have to go for another effort if he wants a chance at pole position. And in fact, he's actually got out of the way of one of the other drivers. I'll tell you what, who was that? That was one of the Mercedes. I do believe he's trying to track down which car that was. In actual fact, let's have a look at our manufacturer's list. That may have been Vessel in that one. And not quite, but he is approaching the part of the circuit that was interesting. I want to see what these Mercedes are doing down this backstretch. We saw 283 kilometers an hour, slightly hampered exit for Mercedes, for the BMW of Gerardis when we saw that. Just check in on Duacop. He's beginning his lap, but already going very, very quickly. So how is it for Vessel in this V8 roaring Mercedes down this backstretch? Their number 30 car. That's 250, 260, a bit before he gets towards the chase, 270. Starts to pick up a bit more speed on that downhill, and in actual fact, he's a bit slower than the BMW, so maybe the BMW is looking very good at the top end. Those cars have been looking very quick as of late. Valentin, first driver into the 59. Stellar effort there from the Frenchman. Have to keep an eye on Duacop's lap. He is 2/10 up at the moment. He flies over the crest into McPhillamy Park once more. Commitment from the Mercedes driver. That's where it all went wrong for him in the race previously. Big moment on the entry there, but keeps it together very nicely. Hits all of those apexes over the crest. And now flying down towards Forest Elbow. Couple of stabs at the brake on the entry, almost taking off as he goes down into that, tucks it into the camber, clipping the wall on the exit though. But he is 4/10 up on his previous lap time, and he is going to get a very nice draft of that Lamborghini in front. That's Jonathan Clifford, who was very kindly indicating his way towards the right side of the track. So despite clipping the wall, I think Duacop has managed to maintain more or less his advantage, and this is a big lap time from the German driver. Number 19 car hard on the brakes towards 21. Clips a little bit off the curb, nice through 22 as well. Doesn't want to run wide on the exit, carrying this all the way down to the final corner now. Trying to make it to pole positions on the bounce is the German driver at this Australian circuit. Lost a bit at Murray's, but it's still going to be, I think, good enough right now to displace the Frenchman of 59.8. Brilliant lap time there for the number 19 car. George Boothby, again, almost straight into the back of one of the other Hondas. I think that was Sebastian Krohn on the right-hand side. But Boothby, 2/10 up on his personal best. Needs to find a bit more, but of course has a lot of lap to go, but that's a lot of traffic in front of that car. Just having a look further down the order, I see Barnabas Fazekas as well on a big improvement, although I think he went deep through 21 and 22, so he's lost a bit of time. And that 28 car rounding out through the final corner, wide on the exit as well, but it is good enough for P4. Great effort there from the Hungarian driver. That was a fantastic lap. So the Hondas definitely having some pace around here. Purple sectors again for Florian as he crosses over Mountain. We know he's got some extra time in the tank, we think, from the exit of Forest Elbow. George Boothby nicely, oh dear, I was about to say nicely through the dipper, but clattering the wall like that, that'll bring that one to an end pretty quick. So abandoning that lap, and I think he'll only get one more flying lap in all of this. Looking at the clock, Florian Duacop though, how's he fare this time? Might get a little bit of a toe off for Honda in front as well. Got to be more cautious than he was last time, and he is. Carries that momentum. And see how does the Delta benefit. Valentine also going very quick, and he's earlier on in the lap as well, so it could be a bit of a duel between Duacop and Valentine. Now through in towards the chase. I tell you what, that slipstream was very powerful last time around for Duacop, because he's actually lost time despite the better exit out of Forest Elbow, but a much better exit by the looks of it. Pretty even actually out of 22. We know he lost time through 23. In towards Murray's then clipping that curb tighter on the exit there. Has got the improvement. It's a 59.6, but Valentine 2/10 up on his previous best, close to the wall as you dare. And the Frenchman trying to extract absolutely everything from this lap now. Romagnoli in the background. I think George Boothby will be starting his final attempt fairly soon. Fazekas, I think, has just had a moment, so it won't be an improvement from the Hungarian for the time being. Nils Steinbrenner leads BMW at the moment. Great stuff from him to get that car into 4th position. Valentine, you saw him fighting the car through the exit of 22. And that has lost him time, and unless he has an extravagant exit through Murray's corner, which is a bit back and forth, it's a small improvement, but it's not good enough to displace a Mercedes. But he will have at least one more attempt if he is able to, if he's got the fuel in the car to do it. He may have a couple more. See, yellow flag out for Florian, so that will be it for the German driver. So no more improvements for him. Just trying to see what happened to him as he came over top of the mountain and too much speed and straight into the concrete. So that will be his qualifying done. So there is the marker. There's the reference that all of these drivers have to chase. Manos Gerardis in the number 17 car, the Greek BMW, taking up to 3rd position. Fantastic stuff there from him. He's still got another lap to go. Valentine early on in the lap, he's found a 10th. Gerardis a 10th. 2/10 for George Boothby, and he's only on the exit of turn 1. So certainly maybe not comfortable viewing just yet for the German. Jade Hutchinson about to cross the line. 3/10 up as he enters in towards Murray's then. 4/10. A Ferrari driver trying to move his way up the order. It's going to be a big improvement to the front row. Great effort there. Purple in the final sector. I think got a big toe off the Mercedes in front of him. And that number 12 car, the Canadian driver, has been stellar in all the races he's been able to finish. And that disconnect, unfortunately, really did hamper his championship hopes. As Valentine, oh dear, I think that's the exit of Forest Elbow, so the Frenchman, no improvement for Valentine then, so he won't start any higher than P3 and clatters the wall through Forest Elbow, pushing too hard, chasing that time of the Mercedes, and won't get anything more. Tell you what though, Hutchinson, he might not be out of this just yet. He's a 10th up. Couple of yellow flags. Smollett returned to the pits. Oh, George Boothby, half a second up. Purple in the middle sector. This is a mighty time so far from the British driver. He's sat on pole position many a time. 6/10 up for the number 4 car. This is monumental pace for George Boothby. And this could really swing things when it comes to the championship, because he has not, unusually, has not won a race. Our top 3 drivers in the championship haven't actually won a single race this season. But I'll tell you what, this time from George Boothby could really change the momentum of all that, pushing the limits through 21-22. It's fine margins up against Florian Duacop. No improvements further for Hutchinson. George Boothby, he'll definitely go to the front row. Is it good enough for pole? Luke Whitehead to P2, but George Boothby does go towards pole on a 59.5. Duacop then has to settle for P2. Whitehead P3. Carpenter, late effort from him, P4. Great stuff. Korekis, another one of the Veloce Esports cars. He's got the back straight left to go. Gerardis is on another lap, so he'll be in this one. And Luke Addison, 2/3 up. An improvement for him as well. So we'll keep an eye on Korekis for the time being. See how he does as he comes in towards the chase now. But my goodness, George Boothby, not allowing Florian Duakop to make it to pole positions out of his circuit. Carreras really chucking that push. He has to commit so much in these corners because he loses so much pace on the straight sections of his circuit. And the number 1 car in the server hitting the timing beam. It will be an improvement. Oh dear. It was an improvement, but in the end, still only good enough for P7, excuse me. Gerard is now exiting Forest Elbow. Luke Anderson is just coming in towards the final turn, though. 2 tenths up for him. This should be good enough for the top 10 for the South African. In towards P8. Here he goes. Manos Gerardis, then the Greek driver. Last of a couple to make improvements. We've also got Benny Vitter in that Yeet Sports BMW. Very distinct livery on that car. And then to see Samir Fox on an improvement as well. Just behind him, I think, unfortunately, Benny Vitter's lost a bit of time in the penultimate couple of corners. Samir Fox, though, 2 tenths up for him. He goes P17. Manos Gerardis up to P6 for the Greek driver. And with all of that said and done, it is George Boothby that takes another pole position here in the Pro Series. What an absolutely fantastic effort from him. The British driver in the Honda. Absolutely massive time from him in the closing stages of that session. It wasn't at that pace. It took time to reach that point. But he managed to make it all come together in the end beautifully. So fantastic stuff from him. We will have a run through the grid in just a moment. As bring all of that together, and we shall have a look to see who is going to win this 90 minutes of racing this evening. But what a fantastic way to start all of that. Bathurst, as always, playing host to incredible action. As just waiting for the overlays to come through, and they have, so we shall have our run through the grid then. And George Boothby takes another pole position in the Pro Series, followed up by the last man that won this race, and he just certainly did it in style, Florian Duakop. He's got a little bit of extra work, though, perhaps to do this time around with George Boothby in front of him. Incredible qualifying from Luke Whitehead, extracting everything in that Veloce Esports car. The Porsche struggling around here, of course. Karppinen did very well at the end of that. In actual fact, 5 different manufacturers, in the top 5. So that is a rare sight and a fantastic one. Jade Hutchinson, the Canadian, starts in P5 with Manos Gerardis. Great effort from him to start in P6. Followed up by Valentin Barry. He might be a little bit disappointed with that one. He looked like he had some extra pace in the car, but didn't quite bring it together at the end when he would have wanted to. Grantis Carreras starts in P8. Maybe a little bit further away from his 2 Veloce Esports teammates he would have liked. Luke Anderson starts at P9. Good session for him as well. Michael Romagnoli in the Aston Martin rounds out the top 10. And then this man, Alex Smollier, looked like he had a bit of a complicated session. His return to the Pro Series maybe not going quite as well as he would have liked. But we know the raw race pace of that man is extremely good. So we'll see how he fares as Neil Steinbrenner starts in P12 with Marvin Vessel in the Mercedes starting in 13th position, with Barnabas Fazekas in the number 28 Honda starting in 14th place. And then Robin Schwanker in that number 5 car starting in P15, with Krzysztof Makowski in the BMW starting in 16th. Samir Fock will then start in 17th position in the Clown Fiesta Esports car. Very distinct livery on that one, with Robin Schaefer, another one of the LFM cars, starting in 18th place for the number 13. Marco Bischoff all the way down in number 19th position. We didn't quite see him in the usual spot that we would have expected, and the man that won last time around, many positions between himself and his potential championship rivals. Matthias Kuhn rounds out the top 20. Sebastian Krohn starts in 21st position, and then Marvin Tiepken newcomer to the top split in the Pro Series. Number 40 car starting in 22nd place. Great stuff from him. Of course, the numbers on these cars do correspond to their relative ranking in terms of ELO on the LFM platform, so it's great to see some of those higher number plates further up the order, so that'll be benefiting their rank. De Campo starts in 23rd with Siggy Lentis in 24th. Sean Tempest in 25th position in the number 14 car. Oliver Ferres in the Ferrari will start in 26th position as those engines all start to fire up, ready to go for what is likely to be a very dramatic race. Jan Drexler starts in 27th position in that number 27 car. Tom Henscher in the Mercedes starts in 28th. Benny Vitter for Yeet Esports starts in 29th place. And then Igor Ogrodkov in the number 21 Porsche. A bit further down the order than perhaps would have expected him. Very talented driver in that car. But have to see how he fares in a race pace. Maybe he can bring it back, but that Porsche could be tricky to make his way through the field. Andrei Poznikov starts in 31st with Pavel Labush in 32nd. Hamza Belhassan, the Moroccan driver, starting in 33rd position in the Honda. Followed up by Roloff Radix. The Dutchman will start in 34th with, just behind him, Malte Busing in the Mercedes there, number 39 car. And then it'll be Rui Nunez in the number 23 Porsche. Portuguese driver will start just ahead of that bright fluorescent green Lamborghini, number 26, Jonathan Clifford, the, I believe, sole American in this field. And then following up him will be Dominic Prescott, the number 37 car. The Honda will start just behind him. Arnaud Brun, who at one point in qualifying was going purple, but the Frenchman does look like in the end didn't quite have the pace for the pointier end of the grid. And then Jan Joog will round out our 40 cars on this circuit. So I have to see how everybody fares this evening for what will undoubtedly be some fantastic action indeed, as we'll sort out the rest of the overlay and get ready for this evening's action. Of course, one mandatory pit stop as per usual in this championship. 20-minute pit window in the central part of this race. But it looks a bit weather-wise, maybe not looking to contribute too much, at least in the immediate future. Half an hour's time, still going to be dry. So it might make any strategy changes a bit easier to adapt to if rain does appear later on in the session. But at least for the time being, it does look like dry running. And also with zero wind on the server at the moment, would suggest that we may maintain these conditions more or less to the end. So perhaps those Ferraris, I think Jade Hutchinson, he has been absolutely mega in that car. I think that car would have benefited from some mixed conditions. Still, of course, a long race, so could see some things that change. But I think the likes of the Ferraris, the Porsches, Aston Martins, McLarens in the field, those cars will be hoping potentially for some rain. It depends. Obviously, some of those drivers may not have done too much in the way of prep for that, but in terms of maybe hampering the pace of cars like the Honda, the Mercedes, which do start to become a little bit more twitchy under those wet weather conditions, it could bring those manufacturers a bit more into play. It'll be George Boothby that will lead these drivers away. He hasn't really been in with a chance of race victory since Watkins Glen, when it all went wrong between himself and Darren McCormack. He took the race lead in the opening phase of the race after, or just before the pit stops, excuse me, where McCormack's tyres seemed to fade. In the second half of the race, really struggled for pace. And then it was a complete reverse in the second half after the pit stops, and McCormack closing in all the time, and eventually, unfortunately, contact between them saw them both go off. It was Valentin Barrow that snuck on through to take his first victory in the Pro Series. So I have to see how they all fare this evening. They get themselves into formation, ready for 90 minutes of action here at Bathurst Race Circuit. Who will be King of the Mountain this time around for Season 9 of the Pro Series? Will we have another new winner, or will it be another repeat? And who will lead in towards Turn 1 as they all line up, ready for watching for those lights to go out. Green lights away then, and George Boothby leads in towards turn 1. Good start there for the Honda driver, and I think he'll cover that position nicely. Florian Duakop slots in towards P2. Karppinen, P3 with several drivers wide on the exits. They all fly through turn 1 then, and now the drag race up the hills, all starting to try bump drafting one other. Luke Whitehead going for the position, using that slipstream, trying to overtake Florian Duakop, who's been bump drafted by Karppinen, but I don't think that's going to work out for the British driver, as we'll try to get a better view of all of it. And Whitehead losing the position to Karppinen as well, and maybe even Jade Hutchinson. I told you that outside line does not work well. Big crash further down the order, number 30 car involved in all of that, as I think Whitehead has managed to somehow maintain that position. So Hutchinson staying behind for the time being, and it's almost single file now up to the first run through Forest Elbow. Number 30, that was Marvin Vettel, that seemed to end up having an incident, unfortunately, on the first run up through hill, and now up towards the concrete, trying to keep it out of the wall if they can, and then through McPhillamy Park. Look at Florian Duakop already right onto the gearbox once more, not allowing George Boothby to get away whatsoever, and Karppinen's in that as well. Did I hear some gravel in the background? I'm not too sure. Don't see any yellow flags though, so I think everyone's made it through there okay for the time being, as they wind their way now down towards Forest Elbow. And look at this, it's George Boothby, Florian Duakop, Timo Karppinen, and then Whitehead, who might come under pressure from the Ferrari of Hutchinson on this drag race for the first time. Let's go on board the rear diffuser as George Boothby. See, that Mercedes does start to gain down this back straight, but I think he might have enough of a margin for the time being. How are some of our other drivers faring? It's been a great start for Alexander Smolia, who is now already up into P8, so a big mover on the opening lap. So great stuff for the number 7 car, but no one able to make any positions up on that first run towards the chase, other than the likes of Steinbrenner. Oh, it's busy further down the pack, and Mikowski, Samuel Fox side by side, Marco Bischoff and Robin Schaefer also in towards Murray's corner then for the first time. Samuel Fox ahead of the BMW. Schaefer comes out ahead of Marco Bischoff, but Fazekas getting involved in all of this one as well, as they head in towards turn 1. The Porsche trying to go around the outside and carry that momentum, and he will hold that position for the time being. Check back in further up the order, though. I think Valentine has lost a couple of positions to Korekis and Luke Addison, so not what the Frenchman would have wanted, as Korekis looks left, looks right, but can't make anything happen on the run there. What about Robin Schaefer versus Christoph Mikowski? And it's the German driver that comes out on top in all of that for the time being. Marco Bischoff pushing on hard just behind George Boothby, second clear at the front end of the field. So great stuff from him. Siggy Lentis around the outside. Sebastian Krohn as they head up through turn number 4 on this second lap. And fairly clean from each of these drivers. We'll have a look at our biggest movers in just a second, but great stuff from George Boothby, because he already has a second advantage. Florian Duakop was keeping him honest initially on that opening lap, but my goodness, he is certainly pushing on at this point in time. And let's have a quick look at each of these movers. So yes, Smolia, 4 positions gained on the opening lap. That has been fantastic for him. 3 for Samir, 3 for Robin Schaefer. Further down the order, George Boothby weaving his way left and right. There's like a snake down Conrad Straight on this second lap, as they all fly towards the chase. And that Mercedes quick in a straight line, but George Boothby and that Honda is also mighty, mighty fast. So Florian Duakop certainly has his work cut out if he wants to close in and make something happen on our current race leader. Smolia pushing on behind Gerardis, as further down to Campo and Tiekman side by side through in towards the chase there, and has managed to get the move done. Also Romagnoli and Valentin Barrett swap positions. The Aston Martin gets a move done. Henscher, Ognonkov have swaps. Now we've got Rui Nunez and Malta Busing going side by side. The Aston Martin of Radix there trying to get involved in all this one as well, but they will continue as they were. Jan Joog, good exit out of Murray's corner though, maybe able to make something happen on the run up towards turn 1 in that Porsche. Florian Duakop, fastest lap of the race last time round, and the German driver does make his way through very easily on Radix, who I think has had a bit of a compromised line on the exit, and that is the Honda of Plescott now trying to make his way through on the drag race towards turn 2, but we know that outside line is very tricky to make work. Number 37 car will be in a tricky position. Oh, and he's gone wide on the entry there. Wasn't left much room to play with. Jonathan Clifford will say thank you very much. I think the American is going to sneak through on the inside now to the outside as they head up the hill in towards the cutting, and he does. The Lamborghini driver, good opportunistic driving from him. Let's go on board with Alexander Smolny as they go in towards the dipper on this that wiggle for Gerardis as they come over the crest. And Smolny looking very racy. Maybe didn't have the pace in qualifying, but certainly seems to be in fine form right now. And we'll have another drag race out of Forest Elbow. George Boothby still leads by about a second. How fast is his Honda down the back straight? I think the answer is pretty good, and it is gaining more and more. And will he be side by side as they get towards the chase? I think he'll be just a smidge too far away, but maybe close enough. Oh, that's awkward. You saw him have to back out of the steering for a moment there. Smolny down the inside now on the BMW, and he does about just to get it done. And Joe is not left with anywhere to go in all of that. Valentine, I think, tried to retake the position on Romagnoli, has lost out a bit in all of that. Backs up Robin Schwanker, who's now under pressure from Neil Steinbrenner, trying to go around the outside and in towards P12 for the BMW, but I think McLaren now has the inside line, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to do anything about that on the run in towards turn 1. Barely 7 minutes in, and it's been absolutely full on in these opening laps, and McLaren does hold on to that position. We've also got Ognorkov and Drexler that were battling a little bit of a three-way tussle for the positions just outside of the top 25. But they all keep it together for the time being. Fast lap of the race now, George Boothby, and he maintains that second advantage. Gerardis has not let go of the back of Alexander Smolny, and I don't think see any moves up towards turn 2 this time around. Steinbrenner very close to the back of Robin Schwanker in towards the cutting. Let's get a great view on board with this BMW as they head through this very windy, twisty section of the lap. This is where I imagine the McLaren will be pretty good. Oh, I say that. Big twitch, actually, for Robin Schwanker. So, eating my words almost immediately. Steinbrenner, though, he's got the momentum, but I don't think surely... No, he won't have a look towards the inside line into Skyline there, but he is very close to the back of that McLaren, and that car may be struggling a little bit for straight line speed down this next stretch. We'll have to see. The BMWs did seem rather pacey down Conrad Straight. Tell you what, Florian Duacop reeling in our race leader a little bit on this lap. So George Boothby by no means has escaped just yet. Steinbrenner then locked into the toe of the McLaren. I do actually need to check for a moment on Hutchinson. No, he can't do anything on Whitehead. I think Whitehead has got a bit of a lower downforce setup than he ideally would like, but BMW down the inside, is he? Not quite. Robin Schwanker holds onto that position. In actual fact, Samir Fock trying to make up another move in the opening 10 minutes of this race. Steinbrenner forced to defend to the inside line. Ferrari towards the outside then, and Steinbrenner may lose out on the exit, but Samir is blocked on the exit, and now I have to look towards the outside line once more as they head in towards turn 1. He's got two BMWs lurking in his mirrors, and of course that K Kramer Racing Esports car of Marco Bischoff as well. As they now, oh, that's a yellow flag for the number 39 car. That is Malta Busi, and we'll try to catch that in a minute if we can. But it's a drag race now with the BMWs. They're going to be bumped after. I think Sam has chosen the wrong side to go in all of that, because now Robin Schaefer and Mikoski all working together on that inside line. Sam, though, doing a great job on the outside line. Oh, actually, Schaefer into the wall, who was the one that wasn't under pressure in all of that, but the Ferrari has lost a position Steinbrenner went in the wall. Schaefer takes position off the Ferrari. Mikoski has to still stay behind as Poznikov and Drexler have swapped positions on the run up towards turn 2. And I think, unfortunately, won't be able to see. Oh, Duacop, only 2/10 between himself and George Boothby. So suddenly, the battle for the lead is immediately on. Has George Boothby made a mistake over that very tricky section of the top part of the circuit then? We saw Florian get it all wrong in qualifying. And we also saw him almost lose a race win. It's one of his only race win. And look, Karppinen still very much in this. Whitehead, Hutchinson, Smolia on the gearbox of the Ferrari as well. And this is the closest that Florian Duakop has been in a very long time. And I don't think he's got enough straight line speed to fight against the Honda. And what about the BMW that's just behind him? Karppinen gaining all the time. And he thinks about move. And he has sent it up towards the inside. The German driver gives him just about enough room. Karppinen takes a chunk of curb and a half. And Smolia has made the move on Jade Hutchinson in the meantime. So the Honda power paying off dividends for the number 7 car, and now finds himself in 5th position. This has been an amazing opening 10 minutes for the number 7 car, previous race winner and fastest lap of the race on that lap as well. So Smolia really on the move, and with 90 minutes, well, with a 90-minute race, 80 of them still left to go, do not rule out that man. Now Luke Whitehead, and right in the hot seat to try and make up a move. Look at the BMW, even with the slipstream that Porsche is getting, and I think with a bit of a reduced wing on that car to just make it that bit easier to deal with the straight line speed deficit, Karppinen, that BMW, able to still pull away, and the gap at the front now 1.2 seconds, but notably, definitely something on that last lap happened, because 201.3 for Boothby, 201.8 for Duakop, 2-minute 0.5 for Smolia. That is a mighty difference. We know he did have that toe down the back straight, but that is a huge difference in lap time when these cars are so close together. Robin Schwanker starting to put some pressure onto Valentin for 11th place. But I think right now our closest fight on circuit is potentially Smolia and Whitehead, and I don't think, even with that reduced wing, I don't think there's anything that the Porsche is going to be able to do against this number 7 car that is looking mighty fast in a race trim. Hutchinson will want to try and stick with him, see if he can follow through, but I think Whitehead might be in a little bit of trouble here. Your net championship leader, the flat 6 roaring into life, but the Honda is already gaining, and we're barely down a quarter of this straight. And here comes another 7 car, closing all the time, goes to the right hand side of the Porsche, and I don't think there is anything that Whitehead can do against the pace of this Honda, and he's got the move done before they even get to the chase. And it's 4th place now for Alex Smolia, who now sets off in sight of the podium positions, and this is a mighty opening stint from that number 7 car. Just checking in, that is 7 positions gained in less than 15 minutes around this tricky race circuit, and with the pace that he is showing right now, he could very much make up a few more. Purple again on the last lap, purple sector 1, purple sector 3, and Robin Schwanker and Steinbrenner also battling side by side, and that is Robin Schaefer trying to make his way through now on the inside, and Robin Schwanker left with nowhere to go in all of that. Also further down the order, got Sebastian Krohn on the inside line of Siggy Lentis towards turn 1 there, and the Honda able to make up the position in all of that. And this is mighty stuff in the opening part of this race. I need to check in again, though, on our race leaders, because look at this, Florian Duakop, this gap really continuing between George Boothby and Duakop now, and with Smolia closing in on this as well. This could get very busy very quickly. De Campo and Siggy Lentis were also battling a bit on the run up towards turn 2 there, and I think it's De Campo, the Italian, that has come out on top in all of that. The Ferrari driver ahead now of the Ferrari, but look at this for the race lead. It's gone the rear diffuser of George Boothby. How brave is Florian? How brave is Karppinen through this part of the lap? The Honda's got agility. The Mercedes has very good electronics in that car. ABS and TC work pretty nicely, although it can step out a little bit sometimes on power, and Smolia is absolutely glued to the back of Karppinen. The largest gap between these drivers is between 1st and 2nd place, and look at this, Karppinen absolutely glued to the rear diffuser now, and this is going to get mighty busy between these drivers in a moment, because Smolia towards the right hand side of Karppinen onto the grass, trying to go around the outside Florian Duakop. That is absolutely mental stuff towards the chase. The cameras will switch in a moment, almost 3 wide into their Smolia across the grass. Karppinen can't make the move. Smolia had to back out that one. Oh, almost into the wall. Hutchinson ahead of Whitehead in all of that as well. So the Porsche continue to fall down the order. Karppinen down the inside of Florian Duakop again into Murray's. Not quite. My goodness, that was brave stuff from the Finnish driver. Ice cold, like Kimi Räikkönen himself. But Karppinen unable to make the move stick, and George Boothby breathes a sigh of relief for the first time in this race. Smolia almost looked like he was going to be one to benefit all of that, and in the end ends up coming under pressure from Hutchinson and Whitehead now as they charge up the hill once more. Karppinen locked onto the gearbox of Duakop. Yellow flag out for the number 24 car, but we can't look at everything. Karppinen flashing lights there, maybe not too happy of a late move towards the left-hand side from the German driver, but they all maintain for position for the time being. Meanwhile, we've got another train building up. That is Marco Bischoff side by side with Mikoski, who's trying to go on the inside line of Samuel Fock. Can't make that one stick. The Porsche has to stay behind for the time being as well in all of that, and this is absolutely on the edge of your seat stuff. Tiefken and Siggy Lentus as well, I think, swap positions on the run up towards turn 2, but we have to go back towards our leaders because very soon I think it's all going to kick off again. George Boothby then leads. That's a yellow flag for number 14 car. Who is that? That's Sean Tempest. Oh, and that's a big impact with the wall on the entry there. I'm trying to see if I can get the replay for that, so I'm not getting much response, and unfortunately, we're just going to see the aftermath once more for the BMW, but the 14 car, heavy impact on the front end, and I think he has now retired to the pits, unfortunately for him. Oh, Florian Duakop. Note those margins were the same as they were, but Karppinen definitely close up to the back once more of the German driver. Smolia trying to regain some ground as well. This BMW, though, looks mighty quick in a straight line down in towards the chase. Will he go down towards the inside line again? Not quite this time. Florian, oh, maybe a bit deep on the brakes, and he is. Big wiggle on the exit. Karppinen maybe sensing an opportunity for the cutback now towards the right-hand side. Schaefer and Barrier also dueling it out. Oh, bumping between the pair of them, and the German driver cutting off the nose of the BMW. It's not going to help him, though, because the Grippax engineering car slots in front on the run-up towards start-finish. Flashing of the lights there from the Mercedes. I think Karppinen might say that was all fair game and all that in the end, because that was a bit of a shove on the entry towards the final corner. Now, Smolia really locked on to the Mercedes, and what can he do in all of this? Because that car, mighty quick in a straight line. Valentine and Schaefer did swap positions, I do believe, in all of that, and the Honda has got the pace, he's got the slipstream. Duakop needed to defend that inside line. I think he's going to lose 2 positions in almost as many corners, and the Honda now into the podium positions. So it's Boothby, Karppinen, Smolia, Duakop, Hutchinson back in this as well with all of this scrapping, and the man that won this race last time that we were here at the mountain now finds himself in P4. George Boothby has a 2.2 second lead. Now it's a case of can he hold on to it, and how long will Smolia take to maybe make up another position. Hencher and Lentis swap as well. Ognodikov and Drexler's just lost out by the looks of it a bit on the run up through turn 2. What happened there to the BMW? And it was contact between himself and the Porsche, and almost into the pack there. Manages to keep it all together, but losing momentum on the exit sees him drop some positions. White flag for a moment for Florian Duakop. I'm not sure if he had a moment over the hill. Look at this. Smolia already on the attack once more. And there's the Grippax engineering car fading from the right-hand side in front of the Honda, and it's a mighty quick car in a straight line, and now with no slipstream for his defence, I think that car is going to drop straight back towards P3 after having only just taken the position. It would have to be mighty brave on the brakes, but I don't think the number 11 car's got anything to fight back with, and Alexander Smolia, having started outside of the top 10, now finds himself in P2 and in hot pursuit of George Boothby, and it's Honda 1 and 2, BMW P3, followed up by Mercedes, Ferrari and Porsche. What a mix of manufacturers we have in this race, and at the pointy end of the grid, and we are barely into the first half an hour. Still crucially no rain visibly on the way for the radar, so that all staying the same. And Gerardis has also got Karekas for company that he is pulling along, but that Porsche unable to do anything for the time being. Duakop closing in on Karppinen. No love lost between them in that previous scrap. And Karppinen maybe a little bit wide through turn 2, but keeps it all together for the time being. What about Mikoski in this train versus Samir trying to find a way through? Oh, I think that was a blue flag for one of the Hondas. I think that might have been Belasan in that car, and went flying through the rearview mirror of Mikoski then, but Samir Fock does hold on to position, does he? I thought we were going to see a move up towards the inside at the cutting there, but nothing quite for the time being. Our front pack, though, still firmly together as they head through Skyline, and Smolia, after getting out of position, hasn't been able to run away just yet. but he's got great commitment in this sector. Look at that, 3/10 on the Delta, clipping the wall though on the exit. Has to be careful about that. And now, Jade Hutchinson in prime position in all of this to maybe have a go at Florian Duacop. That car in front of the Mercedes, not always the best at managing its tyres. And the Ferrari, very much the polar opposite. How much speed has that car got down this back stretch? I'll tell you what, Smollier has already brought the gap under 2 seconds. He is absolutely flying, and so is this number 12 car, the Canadian. Can he find a way through? Almost into the back of the Mercedes, and now down towards the inside. At the end of the chase, but Florian Duacop holds on for the time being, but he's gone wide again. And the Ferrari, but he can't find a way through on the exit there. Meanwhile, De Campo and Sebastian Krohn in a drag race of their own. Ferrari versus Honda, down towards the chase. Ferrari on the outside, number 8 car, and it's easy for the Italian in the end before they even get to that right-hander. And it's all said and done. What about Perez versus Siggy Lentas? Ferrari down the inside, trying to make the move. Gives him room in the number 31 car, but the BMW will hold on to that one for the time being. And Smollier last time round, 2:06 versus a 2:09 for our race leader. And now Luke Whitehead locks onto the gearbox of the Ferrari of Hutchinson, but that Porsche so difficult to make a move. May have to resort to strategy to really try and make that one work. See, it's so difficult to commit to the corners around here because you need every bit of vision that you can. It's bad enough with these concrete walls, the trees, the undulation, the sun, you name it. And when you've got some of the fastest drivers on the LFM platform right in front of you, it makes it very tricky to follow through here at full tilt. You hear them so close to the wall, a pair of Hutchinson almost kissing the concrete there. Seeing how much speed, though, that Ferrari carries through McPhillamy Park, then in towards Skyline. That's where that car is quick. Oh, but it was a big moment there. That's what the bumps does to the Ferrari. And Hutchinson almost coming unstuck in all of that, but great car control to gather all of that one up. And now I think we're about to witness firsthand the pain of being a Porsche driver in this race. As he sits firmly in the slipstream of Hutchinson. We know by the looks of it, or it does seem that Whitehead has got a lower downforce setup than normal. He's gaining a tiny, tiny bit, but I think Hutchinson, with the tow from the Mercedes in front, he sort of half defends the middle of the track, but there is nothing that he can do in the end. It's the same story for his teammate trying to hunt down the BMW of Gerardis, the Greek driver, keeping the Lithuanian behind for the time being. Steinbrenner looking towards the inside of Van Barry, but he can't get through for the time being. What about Ognorkov in the Porsche, glued to the back of Poznikov in that Honda Porsche? Does he think about move towards the inside? Or late defense from the Honda, and almost an attack on the Ferrari of Perez just in front. So I don't think the Honda intended to break that late. I don't think Perez expected him to be up the inside anytime soon there now, but he does launch an attack in towards Murray's then, and the Honda, the number 25 car on the power, 3 wide now on the run up towards Hell's Corner. This is going to get very tight in towards the first turn, but it's Honda, Ferrari, Porsche all battling. That's not going to work. Contact on the entry, surely, and they're still somehow side by side. It's another drag race. The Porsche, understandably, is going to lose out in all of this. We've got the BMW, LaBush, and Benny Vitta closing in all of that. In actual fact, the Ferrari is the one that's losing out, so Perez drops 2 positions. Ognorkov and the Honda of Poznikov trying to take advantage of this. Perez back up towards the inside almost, and it's a wide moment for Benny Vitta as well. He's going to lose out from LaBush, and Drexler hanging in the background of all of this as well. And the ET Sports car up the inside in towards the cutting, unable to Drexler unable to do anything about the BMW in front. But my goodness, that was a bitty moment. Meanwhile, Steinbrenner glued to the back of our Frenchman winner of Watkins Glen. And the Honda not having the best of days. And meanwhile, look at this. Alexander Smollier continuing to fly. 2:06, 2:1.3 for George Boothby. And there is almost nothing between the pair of them right now. The Yasik car, the number 4, that is led since the start of the race. And number 7 has worked his way up all the way from P11 on the grid. Now finds himself almost immediately in prime position to attack for the race lead. Does he think about it towards Murray's? He bides his time. These two have gapped Karppinen in P3, but this has been a mighty performance in the opening 25 minutes of this race from the car that you see on your screen right now. and could very well be looking to make a move in the next lap. Maybe even hunting towards turn 2. Number 7 car gaining equally matched, so these two engines are causing it. It's close to Smolja. Think about a dive towards the inside. He knows he's got time. It's a long race, and he's clearly got the pace, but unable to do anything just yet. As close as you like as we go on board the front splitter of that chasing car. Smolja in towards the cutting. If you are a budding aerodynamicist, getting another nice close-up of the rear diffuser on this car. Follows through, having back out the throttle a little bit. See, where is the difference in pace between these two? Because these are both extremely talented drivers. It just looks like Smolja's got the commitment through these corners over the crest. He's absolutely glued to the back of George Boothby. Oh, he almost thinks you go for a move on the run in towards Skyline, but is absolutely pushing Boothby along. Is it the tyres, a setup choice or something? But something for the British driver that is leading this race is not working. And it certainly isn't too much of an exchange of downforce, because we know that Smolja is extremely quick in a straight line. Equal performance in the back of each of those cars. But with that slipstream, the number 7 car closing. He's made some moves already in this part of the circuit. Is he going to be alongside enough towards the chase? Not quite, but he's looking towards that inside line. Almost bumping contact. Camera's taking its time to catch up. Big dive towards the inside for Smolja on the grass. George Boothby trying to come back, but he can't make the position. And Smolja goes into the lead, but George Boothby not done yet. Karppinen almost immediately back into this one for a three-way fight. Kareka's also glued to the back of Gerardis. Further down, only a tenth separating those two, but still the Porsche unable to do anything. But Smolja from 11th on the grid, he's gained 10 positions and makes the move in towards P1. Leaderboard getting confused for a moment as they all run wide on the exit of Hell's Corner. And still, look at this, after half an hour of racing, there is your battle for the podium positions, and the top 5 absolutely glued to one another. Steinbrenner had brought out the white flag on the exits of turn 1. I'm not sure what happened there between those two drivers, but it seems that he maybe lost a bit in all of that. But my goodness, what a performance so far from Alexander Smolja to go into the race lead, having started that far down the grid. And George Boothby immediately under pressure from the BMW Karppinen as they all send it through the crest over the top of the hill, leaving absolutely nothing to chance. But Boothby really struggling by the looks of it with some understeer in that car, wide through McPhillamys as well. In towards Skyline there over the crest. Karppinen absolutely glued to the back of that car, and George Boothby may look like he's about to go backwards very, very shortly if he can't dig deep and find some extra pace in that car, because Smolja already has a 1.5 second lead over the man that led the opening part of this race, and that is mighty, mighty quick from these drivers. How does Karppinen fare down this backstretch? Then not the best exits for the BMW out of Forest Elbow, but still pushing on. Straight line speed of that BMW we know is good, but I think he needs to be closer if he wants to make something happen there, and he won't be close enough just yet. We are very shortly going to be closing in as well on the pit window of this race. 20 minutes in the center of this 90-minute race. The drivers will have to make their compulsory pit stop. Still no sign of rain on the way, but certainly with the amount of action we have had so far, that we don't need too much more to keep us on our toes. Meanwhile, Onrodkov still trying to make a move on C. Lenses the BMW towards that inside line. The Porsche flies around the outside of the chase end, trying to get it done under brakes. Also got Ferris trying to defend from the Honda of Pozniakov, so the Porsche goes through. The Ferrari, oh, the big moment for Pozniakov, but he's gone around. An evasive action taken from several cars there. He's going to lose positions. Thankfully, he doesn't collect anyone else along the way. The Lentis trying to cut back towards the Porsche on the exit of 22 there, but I don't think he can make anything stick. Pozniakov down in towards 34th position now, and the Porsche does make his way through into 24th, although he will have a lot of close company on this next drag race up the hill. Just need to check on some of our drivers at the pointy end. Don't think anything It should be able to happen in that part of the lap. Same goes for our other drivers battling. Meanwhile, Benny Vitta now trying to go around the outside of the Ferrari in towards turn 2 and contact and into the wall. Almost a mirror image incident what we saw at the endurance race here not too long ago in real life. And that's all. That was almost a very scary rejoin. I imagine that Clifford held his breath there. And I think that's Pozniakov that is just about to recover one of the positions that he lost not too long ago. So Ferrez and Vitta unfortunately coming together there, and in the process the BMW getting some damage on the back of that car and dropping down the order. White flag out for Arnaud Brun. I don't think anything too dramatic happened there, maybe just the leaderboard being a little bit on the cautious side. Carpenter closer than he was last time around to George Boothby, but still unable to make a move, and Hutchinson for Endurocop still very much all in this group, battling for those crucial podium positions in the championship as Steinbrenner versus Robin Schwanker once more. The BMW looks towards the inside. Schwanker, though, late on the brakes. He does get it stopped in time, so the McLaren will hold on to that position for the time being as De Campo and Mateus could swap positions, and Mateus could maybe a run on the outside to come back. But the Ferrari, despite going a bit deep there, holds on as Sebastian Kroh now under pressure from Tom Henscher in the Mercedes just behind. Listen to that big V8 roaring under the bonnet of the number 38 car. Almost thinks about a move towards the inside of the German in front. Unable to do anything for the time being. What about Marco Bischoff, Mikoski, Samuel Fogg all battling as well on the run up towards turn 2. The Ferrari holds that inside line. That's all he can really do, and he's got enough pace in the straights to hold off those cars once more. Infuriating stuff surely for Marco Bischoff. We know how much talent there is inside the cockpit of that car. Meanwhile, Mateus Kuhn has lost out a couple of positions and all of that. What happened there for the German driver is he came under pressure from Sebastian Kroh on that outside line. No momentum that he can carry through the apex there, and loses 2 positions down into 22nd. He goes there. Sebastian Kroh very close to the barrier just in front. Meanwhile, the battle still P2. 3 seconds is now your gap between Smolia and George Boothby. He is just in a league of his own. 2:04 last time out. That's only a tenth slower than his previous best, and he's on a personal best lap time at the moment. He's going to set a fastest lap of the race. Meanwhile, everyone else is almost 0.6, half a second slower than they were before. This is mighty stuff from the number 7 car as a yellow flag for Ognordikov further down the order. What has happened there? Oh dear, sideways on the exit of McPhillips Park. Hopefully manages to stay out of everyone's way. I think he will. So we'll scroll back on the replay. He was by himself. Igor, as he comes through there over the crest of the hill then. Of course, we've seen how tricky it is through this section of the circuit of Porsche. He stays out of the concrete there as it through. McPhillips, oh, see, really had a weird bounce there. And then over the curb, loses the traction and then loses the grip as a result. Everyone does an extremely good job there to avoid on that first approach to the instant. And Igor doing well to keep out of everyone's way as well. I think Mateus Kuhn has swapped around some positions in all of that again, but I don't think I'm going to have time to have a look because still this battle at the pointier end of the grid raging on. 2:01. He's almost in the 59s, Alexander Smolia. He is absolutely flying, though back into the 2-minute times for Carpenter, Florian Duacop, Hutchinson. All in that last lap is Boothby that is the bottleneck right now in all of this. And the Honda driver, multiple-time race winner, one of the most successful drivers on the LFM platform here in the Pro Series, struggling for pace despite that amazing pole position. Doesn't quite seem to have had what he needed in terms of race pace compared to the cars around him as they all absolutely extract everything they can through the track here at Bathurst, pushing everything to the limit, and they are nose to tail as they head through Skyline once more. And into the dipper, now in towards Forest Elbow. Carpenter dropping back a little bit this time around. They're not quite having the momentum as that's a yellow flag again. Who's that for? That is for Bussing, who has gone off on the entry towards... oh dear, that was rather unfortunate. I have a feeling that was quite a bit more of a dramatic incident than was portrayed on the catch-up of the replay, and unfortunately I think he's lost it on the exit of McPhillips, carried that all the way down the hill, hasn't been able to gather it all up, and then has tagged the wall eventually. Very similar to where Florian Duacop lost it last time that we were here at this circuit. but he had a very fortunate bounce in the way that he came out of that one. Meanwhile, Korekis has managed to make the move onto Gerardis. He has been staring at the back of that BMW for a very long time. So let's go on board the Lithuanian. He was quite far back, so I think Gerardis must have made a mistake through in towards this chicane, because the number 1 car was nowhere near close enough to make a move. Very deep under brakes for the BMW, and Gerardis, when he comes back onto the circuit, no momentum, nothing to fight with, and Korekis says thank you very much and goes up into 7th place. Crucial stuff for the man that is once again battling for a championship. Still no victories to his name. It's almost criminal, because he has been absolutely stellar these last couple of seasons. Meanwhile, Robin Schwanker, Vanti Barrier battling side by side on the run up towards turn 2. The McLaren coming out on top in all of that. In 12th place, Barrier in 13th, followed up very closely by Steinbrenner. Pit window has now opened, so 20 minutes for these drivers to change their tyres. Do they go for the undercut? Surely George Boothby at this race. I can only imagine George Boothby's hope in this race is to go for an undercut strategy and try to hold track position, because he's holding track position right now. If he allows other drivers to get an undercut based on his drop-off in pace, I just can't see that he's going to be able to hold on to P2, and he needs those crucial points if he wants to stay locked in to a championship fight, because this is a good race for him right now versus the net championship leader of Whitehead, and then teammate, of course, Grantis Korekis is down in 7th place. So crucial things for George Boothby, and he's continuing to come under pressure. Hutchinson was almost closer to Duacop there for a moment, but he still can't get past the Mercedes. It just has a little bit too much grunt. And what happens here? No one deciding out of our top 5 to go into the pits just yet. Of course, it is still a bit on the early side, but I would have to think that maybe in the next couple of laps, or maybe Boothby will wait and see if he does get overtaken, and then he might pit immediately after that to try to recover the position. Of course, these drivers very, very aware about how strategy will be playing out. That's awkward with the Porsche of Ogrodnikov, Valentine, Steinbrenner, McCoskey, Bischoff all deciding to come in to the pits. So we do have a few early stoppers in all of that, as the Porsche is in a bit of an awkward place. So it's going to be on the outside in towards turn 2. Thankfully, not causing too much of disruption for our top 5. As Korekis, I think, was battling once again with Gerardis. So the BMW, after losing that position, was already immediately back on the attack. So Korekis has not been able to escape. And we know the straight line speed advantage that the BMW has. And he may well be able to make a move back on the number 1 car very shortly. Also checking in on the times at the pointy end of the grid. 2-minute point 4 for Smolia last time round. George Boothby now sets his fastest lap of the race on his last time around the mountain. 2-minute point 7, so he's still 0.3 down, but it does look like pace is coming back now towards the Honda. So that middle phase of the stint was very detrimental, but does seem to have had, he's gone through a bit of a graining phase with the tyres. Smolia, they've kept them in a better operating window, because 4.5 seconds now is his lead. I think it's George Boothby, 0.4 advantage over Karppinen. Yellow flag for Fazekas. Oh dear, that's dramatic over the mountain then. Several cars bunching up, and hopefully Fazekas can refrain from making contact with anybody as they come through there. I think he should be able to go safely now. We'll try to check in on what happened there for the Hungarian driver. So he was by himself through McPhillamy's then on the exit. So it's gone wrong in towards Skyline, I think. Is it over the bumps in the braking? He does. He gets a big slide and a heavy impact. We've seen plenty of crashes like that before. And it was the Ferrari just behind, unfortunately, that cleared him out of the way and ploughed the path of safety for everyone else. A very awkward position for the number 28 car to recover in all of that. That is not where you want to be. He has got going again. Meanwhile, further up the grid, gaps for the first time have extended a bit. One that has come down, though, Jan Drexler versus the Ferrari of Ferrer, still very close together. A lot of drivers going for that early pit stop, so these guys not wanting to... Oh, that was actually a bit of a fake towards the pit lane entry there. Maybe trying to get the Ferrari to pit earlier than the German. that is following him very closely. I said that those gaps had opened up immediately. Giant Hutchinson, 3/10 to Florian Duakop, and 4/10 between George Boothby and Karppinen as they head over the top of the mountain. Flying down in towards Skyline and the Dipper once more. Such an amazing sequence of corners. So satisfying when you get it right, but absolutely terrifying as side by side again towards turn 2. But that inside line is the more dominant one, despite running slightly wide through there. The camber is in favour with the Ferrari, and the BMW, I thought he was going to have a move up towards the cutting there, but can't quite make anything happen just yet. We've also got Benny Vitter trying to hunt down Dominic Plescott in front of him in the Honda. But nothing yet. Meanwhile, Karppinen, closest he has been in a very long time again, almost onto the grass on the entry, and the cameras once more being absolutely useless, but George Boothby holding on to the position in P2. Karppinen, so brave through such a scary section of the circuit, trying to find absolutely anything that he can work with and almost making it work, but still has to stay in P3. And again, this is all helping Smolia extend his advantage at the front. 5 seconds now the gap between himself and George Boothby, but Karppinen right now locked onto the gearbox of that Honda and very much in pursuit of the British driver. Losing a bit, though, on the exit of turn 1. So the BMW not quite able to fight all the time. Robin Schaefer, now one of the next drivers to come in to the pits. And that will allow a few of our other drivers in the mid-pack to temporarily gain some positions. We'll have to see how it all plays out with the undercut strategy. In actual fact, let's have a look. I think McCoskey is the first of our drivers that have made a stop. And this will be his first flying lap on this fresh set of tyres. His previous best was a 2:01.1. So we'll get an idea of the relative pace of these fresh tyres to how they were faring in the first stint. Again, still dry conditions, and it looks like it will be dry to the very end, as McCoskey make his way in towards the final corner now. So this will be our frame of reference. So here's a big improvement. Excuse me, I say that. I think the delta was maybe in reference to the outlap. It was a 2:02.1, so a bit slower than I would have expected for the number 20 car. So we'll keep an eye on some of those and see what the fresh tyres ends up doing for these cars. Of course, admittedly, fuel is going to be changing throughout the stint as well, so we wouldn't necessarily expect a direct improvement in time. So maybe the overcut could actually end up being the beneficial strategy. We saw it work for Marco Bischoff last time around, and Karppinen, I thought for a moment he was trying to, that's a terrible camera angle, Karppinen was trying to put a bit of a decoy towards the pit lane there, but the Finnish driver has now committed to the pits, and from that very intense battle on the podium positions, he has decided that he wants to try that undercut strategy, and that allows George Boothby to push on a little bit, because Florian Duakop about a second and a bit behind the Honda driver. But I imagine we'll start to see some of our other drivers in this part of the order starting to make pit stops, because they won't want to be left behind with drivers that are on those fresh tyres. George Boothby then just circling his way through the cutting. High commitment stuff constantly around this circuit. So much concentration required to uphold this incredible level of pace. And Alexander Smolia has been absolutely on fire today. By far one of the best drives I've seen so far. Only halfway through his race, so he still has to see it to the end, but certainly has been a monumental effort. They're just emerging in the background is Karppinen, so on track. He is down in 15th place for the BMW, as again Drax are trying to go around the outside of the Ferrari. Can't make it stick though. Karppinen has got just about some fresh air in front of him, so he should be able to push on for the time being, but it won't be long until I imagine he closes up to the back of Radix and Dressler. So the BMW will be hoping that that doesn't hamper his chances of that undercut strategy. Meanwhile, Hutchinson in the number 12 car pushing on and is close to the back of Duacop once more. So is Gerardis, trying to hunt down the Porsche of Grantis Correcas, but the flat six still holding on, and it's now Hutchinson who takes that very creative line that we see on the pit entry for Bathurst quite often, and he decides to come into the pit. So I have to see how that plays out versus Karppinen, who of course has gone for the undercuts. Imagine Karppinen should still come out in front in all of that, but it'll be interesting to see what the difference in the gaps are. Meanwhile, just looking at Makovsky, 201.9 for him, so that's 7/10 off the pace of his previous best. So with our other drivers, it would suggest that initially that the overcut would be the preferred strategy. So I have to see how it all plays out. Maybe once those tyres start to kick into life a bit more, then maybe they will become the preferred choice. We've also got Correcas coming into the pits. Samuel Fox, Sebastian Krohn, Henscher now in the pits as well. Drexler, Radix. So a lot of drivers have decided to blink in reaction to those around them. But I'm looking at the lap times. I'm not convinced that the undercut is going to be right for everybody. I thought with the fall off that we saw for certain drivers earlier on that maybe that would be the way to go. But my instincts right now, after what we saw with Marco Bischoff last time, with that overcut strategy at Kyalami that was executed to perfection, I'm not 100% convinced that it is going to be the beneficial route to go down. Meanwhile, Karppinen versus Hutchinson. Oh, I say that could be rather telling. Look at the difference between number 12 and number 11 car. That is a big, big gap. And bearing in mind, those cars were within a few car lengths of one another earlier. So maybe it depends on the setup and the car that you've got underneath you in all that as well. Because we saw Boothby, he was very quick in the opening phase of the race, and then seemed to lose pace in the mid part, but it's come back to him. So these tyres, the way they're behaving around this very high demand circuit, is definitely different for each car, as we once again get the world's worst camera shots as George Boothby and Florian Duacop come into the pit. So this will be very important. Gerardis in as well. So Gerardis will be battling with Correcas when he comes out of the pits. And of course, Boothby, Duacop all looking to try to go for the overcut strategy. And, well, for Boothby, just trying to keep Karppinen behind. He's managed to uphold a very good amount of pace on this last lap. Luke Whitehead is going for that overcut strategy, so he's trying something different, understandably so. I think he had a bit of a margin towards Gerardis and Correcas, so he should be somewhat safe in all of that. And only now 7 drivers in our grid that are left to pit. In actual fact, effectively 2, being Smollier and Whitehead as our last drivers come into the pits. So, Karppinen coming around the final corner now. And whereabouts is George Boothby? He is just exiting the pits. Karppinen coming around turn 1. It's going to be close on the exit then. He is going to slot in front of the Mercedes, and he's got the extra momentum as they climb uphill, and those tyres, crucially, will be up to temperature. Karppinen, can he make the most of those tyres? Advantage that he has right now over George Boothby, but he's got the inside line, and there's just nothing that he can do, and he knows it, and he backs out. But he will still have great grip, great pace through this next part of the lap. Yellow flag out for the 37 car. That is Dominic Plescott, who was at an incident going in towards Skyline by the looks of it, and was facing backwards well before we managed to get to him on the cameras. So unfortunate stuff for the number 37 car, but look at Karppinen, absolutely glued to the back of George Boothby, almost pushing him along, and that's where these tyres are now up to the window, well, certainly in a better window than Boothby's will be behaving at the moment. We've seen how brave Karppinen can be, but he has got to really get it right through this next part of the lap, and that was a bit squiffy. The Honda agile through the dipper, and he's managed to open up the advantage, and that could be Karppinen's one and only chance, potentially done, but it's a good run out of Forest Elbow. It's a mega run out of Forest Elbow for the BMW, and now it's the power of the slipstream, and George Boothby knows that BMW is hunting, it's fired up, and Timo Karppinen, we've seen him be brave before. Is he going to go one side or the other? Once again, he's going to the outside line, again towards the chase, and he's a bit more alongside than he was previously, down towards the inside he go. Can the Grip Packs engineering car get his way up into effective P2? George Boothby holding on firmly on the outside, little bit over the curb, though. Florian Duacop will be rubbing his hands together as we're now almost 3 wide, down in towards the final corner, but Karppinen still on the inside line, and I think surely, unless he goes too deep, is there anything that Boothby can do? Boothby on the inside line still fighting back. Smollier and Whitehead will be emerging out of the pits in just a moment in front of all of this. George Boothby back up the inside in towards turn 1. There's your race leader just in front, and Florian Duacop and the Teemu Karppinen Grippax engineering car bumping wheels once more on the exit of turn 1. George Boothby for now holds on to P2. Drag race with the Mercedes. George Boothby trying to decide which car he gives slipstream to, now giving it to the outside. That's going to make it difficult for Karppinen on the entry towards the corner, but he does hold on to P3. And George Boothby holds on to P2. Amazing battling between those two, and the Finnish driver still unable to make his way through, and the German now locked onto his gearbox through in towards the cutting, but unable to make anything stick. And my goodness, fantastic racing between those. Look at the difference though. George Boothby now 1.7 seconds behind Alexander Smollier, so that undercut definitely was very powerful in the end. Bear in mind, that was almost 6 seconds, if not over 6 seconds, before the pit stop, so the undercut did prove to be very powerful by the looks of it in the end, but not quite enough for the likes of Karppinen and Duacop. In actual fact, I imagine that maybe Smollier could have made a mistake either on his in-lap or during his pit stop and lost some time, because I think relative to other cars, I think Karppinen just clipped the wall on the exit Forest Elbow. They're really pushing on, trying to stay in the tow of the Honda in front of him, and that may have compromised his ability to have the long run pace in this last 40 minutes here at Bathurst. George Boothby moving side to side to try and break that tow a bit. The BMW nowhere near close enough this time around, and Florian Duacop dropping back a little bit as well. Chunks of curb taken there. A bit of dust kicked up from Smollier, not too far in front, but he's already starting to extend that advantage in the same way that he has shown phenomenal pace in the opening parts of the race. Meanwhile, Markowski, one of the first drivers to pit now towards the inside of the Ferrari, down towards turn 21 then, and it's side-by-side action between himself and Samir Fogg. Now that turns into the outside again on the exit of 22, and he's kept the momentum up, and Samir has got the BMW down towards his inside, in towards Murray's corner. I don't think there's anything that he can do to fight that one unless he gets a tremendous exit there. Oh, it was a big moment for Markowski on the exit. Completely blocked any sort of run of Samir's then, but I don't think that was intentional. I think he just got it hooked up over the curb. He's gone deep on the entry towards turn 1 there as he tries to regather himself. But I don't think the Ferrari will have anything to fight with. They just immediately allow Robin Schranker to get involved in all of this as well, as that's turned into a 3-way tussle for P12. As once again the cameras being a little bit on the lazy side to catch up with the action, but the BMW is still in front of the Ferrari, then the McLaren, as they all head through turn 2, close to the wall for the BMW and for Marco Bischoff in the background. We get some great camera shots on board these positions once again. They fly up towards the cutting, but still unable to make anything stick. Checking back in at the pointer end of the grid, though, because margins between Boothby, Karppinen and Duacop all very close. Bit of traffic thanks to Brunn in the Ferrari just in front. And I think in actual fact that'll give the advantage to the Honda of George Boothby. Will be gaining a bit in the slipstream, although it's not going to benefit him for very long, because that Ferrari has got well out of the way. But half a second between himself and the Finnish driver will stop any sort of challenge being surmounted, I think, from the BMW this time around. And Florian Duacop, not quite the pace down that backstretch that he needs to close in. Gerardis trying to overtake Korekas. These two have been in an intense fight for a while. Korekas eventually got the move done on the BMW after the Greek driver made that mistake on the exit of turn 21. And oh, that was almost straight into the back of the Porsche. I bet Korekas was trying to make that car as small as he possibly could for a second there, but thankfully no contact. And Gerardis will have to try to fight his way back up towards the rear diffuser of that Porsche if he wants another go. Oh, big contact on the exit of the chase. That's Krohn and Henscher there. Mercedes flying back across the circuit there. I think that they're able to rejoin safely, but what on earth happened there? So this is Henscher in the number 38 car, the Honda, very far back in this current shot, but gaining a huge amount. So I think Henscher could be wounded here. and running a bit slow, and I've also got to catch up with something in a moment. So it was through the apex of a chase, contact there, but Gerardis and Addison briefly brought out the yellow flag, and I need to catch up with that if I can in just a moment. So what on earth has happened there between Manos Gerardis and Luke Addison? I'm trying to scroll back on all of that. So Gerardis was in front of the South African. Oh, as he clipped the barrier on the exit turn 2, and Luke Addison nowhere to go, and sends the BMW spinning. In actual fact, maybe self-righted him a bit quicker than he would have done otherwise. Hopefully not too much damage on the front end of Addison's car, but it does look like Gerardis is running a bit more heavily damaged, very squirrely, and I think he lost a couple of positions in the middle sector to Robin Schaefer and Romagnoli that you now see just ahead of him. So after putting on such a good charge, and there's the hazards, that is a bad sign. Great sign of awareness from the number 17. Very much trying to indicate that he is not in a healthy way at the moment. Schaefer diving down towards the inside of Romagnoli towards 21. Barely gives enough room. A little bit of wheel banging on the exit there, the Aston Martin, leaving nothing to chance. And the number 13 still trying to find a way through. Almost sends one down towards the inside there. And a white flag briefly for Samir Fogg. I don't think that caused anything, but the Aston Martin still having to defend from the BMW for the time being. Also, apparently, Marco Bischoff does not have enough fuel to finish this race, so that is catastrophic for the man that was the first repeat winner last week. And Sebastian Krone's brought out the yellow flag. What's happened there? So Sebastian Krone, the Honda's gone off at the end of the chase. By the looks of it, carries in way too much speed into the apex, loses it, heads across the grass, and in the process will drop a few positions. Romagnoli and Robin Schaefer all about some flashing of the lights. Let's see if we can catch what happened between these two. I don't think they'll be swapping anytime soon in that middle sector. So Romagnoli, the Aston Martin, you see BMW that's been very quick in a straight line all day, gaining, heads towards that outside line, and then, oh dear, that could be a combination, a bit of netcode and also a little bit of aggression there from the pair of them, no one wanting to give each other any room. Flashing lights from the BMW, indicating to that number 16, the Italian's car, that he does believe that it is his fault. Meanwhile, Marco Bischoff in the number 2 car, as actual fact, Jan Joga and Poznikov swapping positions. Poznikov very deep through turn 2. That's going to allow the Porsche a potential run, but the door absolutely firmly shut on the number 22 cars. They head in towards the cutting, so we'll have to try and find another opportunity to make that one work. Catching back up though, Marco Bischoff, as he looks trying to hunt down the McLaren, but it might be a slightly fruitless venture for this Porsche, because if he is going to run out of fuel, that's going to make the tail end of his race extremely difficult. So I have to keep a close eye on all of that, and that McLaren may not be the fastest in a straight line, but relative to the Porsche, certainly does have the legs, although it's got a bit too much because Robin Schranker not able to get that one stopped. So I think Marco Bischoff, regardless of how his race will play out, Schranker almost lost it on the rejoin there as well. The number 5 car drops to P14 after going too deep on the brakes. Very tricky braking zone. I said that McLaren was difficult to get stopped sometimes. It does have a tendency to really go straight on if you're not careful, and that is exactly what's happened to the man that almost took a race victory at Paul Ricard. I think in the end finished in 2nd place, which was a great recovery with the strategy that he was on. White flag out for Drexler, maybe a bit of a moment through 21 and 22, but 27 car still keeping it on the black stuff for the time being. Sebastian Krone in front, not quite doing the same job, but has managed to keep it together enough. He's on board with Florian Duacop, who is in hot pursuit of Carpen in front of him. BMW, I think, is running a little bit wounded, and he'll be annoyed at that mistake on the exit of Forest Elbow, because that has allowed Boothby to just open up about a second. Meanwhile, though, Alexander Smollett, a 59.687 is his fastest lap of the race. That is absolutely insane stuff. 2:02, 6/10 clear of almost everybody else. Only Florian Duacop on the cozier side to that margin. As that's a big set from the Ferrari. My goodness. Sebastian Krohn, I think, had to completely back out that one. Matti De Campo. Let's have a look at that. Let's try and go on board, because that did not look like that was a move that was on at any point. Big margin of difference between the number 8 car and the number 36 when they got to turn 2. Ferrari, at least about a car length and a half, but did the Honda go deep under brakes? I'll have to wait and see. Oh, he did have a bit of a wiggle, and no seconds invitation there for the Italian. Beautifully scythed up the inside, and that is the sort of opportunistic driving that you need around this circuit. I think also Romagnoli as, oh, is that yellow flag? Oh dear, that's Poznik. Oh, that's a big pile-up on the middle of the mountain, and there are more cars on the way to the scene there. That's Benny Vitta that's got nowhere to go. Oh, this is very awkward. Everybody hopefully will be able to sort themselves out sooner rather than later. That's Poznikov. Ogrodnikov has just come across that as well, so that is an unfortunate rejoin in all of that. Jonathan Clifford still planted against the wall. This is the chaos of the mountain, and I think after all of that, I think everyone will get going again. I don't know if we'll be able to see what's happened there. And unfortunately, we've just picked up the replay as Benny Vitta there tries to weave his way through. Very nicely done from the German driver. But that was not what any of those guys would have wanted. It got very difficult as well with the Porsche coming across that instance as well. And unfortunately, that is what can happen around here at Bathurst Race Circuit. And several cars, and that is a big amount of damage for the number 25. I think losing a position, unsurprisingly, in the process. I imagine we'll be into the pits very soon. Jonathan Clifford also dropping down the order. Heavy damage on the nose of that car. We've seen that part of the circuit claim several drivers already. Poznikov, again with the world's worst camera angle, into the pit lane. And he will be looking to try to repair some damage on that car, but that is very unfortunate for those guys. Meanwhile, Marco Bischoff, as soon as he was released from the McLaren of Schwanker, has been able to close into the, I believe, Latvian driver, if I'm not mistaken, of Samir Fock in the Clown Fiesta eSports car. But Marco Bischoff's gone board. Straight line speed for him, even in the slipstream. The Ferrari just powering away, and that Ferrari is not the fastest car on circuit today. 276.7 for Marco Bischoff, and that is the difficulty of driving the Porsche in this championship. It is an absolute weapon in the corners, but it can be infuriating to try to make moves on other cars. Meanwhile, Robin Schaefer and Michael Romagnoli still battling. Drivers at the front end of the pack, gaps have opened up somewhat as Samir Fock, and that was just the leaderboard getting a little bit enthusiastic for a moment, swapping around, and hopefully we'll catch up with what's going on with Robin Schaefer, and again, bumping on the run up towards turn 2 there, trying to hold towards the inside line. Robin Schaefer trying to compromise that as much as possible. Big, brave move, and contact again on the exit, and the Aston still involved in this one, but eventually will have to relinquish a position. And Robin Schaefer in that number 13 car does make his way through, but I wonder if there may be a little bit of words between those drivers later on. I'm not sure if there was a swapping of position with Matthias Kuhn and Jan Drexler as they made their way towards the end of the lap. It's difficult to tell. Sometimes the time beam is a little bit on the sensitive side. Again, Marco Bischoff running very close to the back of Samir Fock to see the difference as they run over the top of the mountain. That Porsche looking planted, but super close to the concrete was the German driver there. Final 26 minutes to go in this race. Samir, again, Ferraris, much like Hutchinson, absolutely glued as they go through McPhillamy Park, and that's where that car really gains. Very good downforce package on the Ferrari, of course, as always, but it's straight line speed, acceleration, and the bumps that tend to be the enemy of this car. And even with that poor line through Forest Elbow, I don't think there's going to be anything that the Porsche can do on this occasion. Bit of dust kicked up, I think, for Arnaud Brun with the blue flags as they got out of the way of this rather enthusiastic battle between Romagnoli and Robin Schaefer that's still continuing to go on. And Robin Schwanker, actual fact, getting back into this three-way tussle, unfortunately removed himself out of that fight not too long ago. Bit damage on the side of that car as well, saw on the door. As see that scrubbing and on the front of the car. So that car is definitely running a bit on the wounded side, and this race definitely about as much of a survival as it is about being quick. May not be a full-on endurance race, but 90 minutes, trust me when I tell you, that will be exhausting enough for your attention span to try to uphold the sort of level of pace that these guys are putting together in this top split. Marco Bischoff again absolutely glued to the back of the Ferrari, but he just can't do anything. The same goes for Schwanker just behind. Samit, cautious of those curbs, does not want to hit those too hard because that will really affect the Ferrari in dramatic fashion. Gaps at the front of the field have continued to open up, so Smollett has extended his lead back up to 5.2 seconds. Karppinen just under a second behind Jules Boothby, who had a bit of a slow lap last time round, half a second off the pace of those around him. Karppinen bringing Duacop along with him. Hutchinson hasn't had quite the same level of competitiveness after the pit stops that he did have. And then Whitehead, Korekas also running a little bit in no man's land at the moment. Meanwhile, Karppinen did gain on that lap once more. And George Boothby again coming under pressure from the Finnish driver, who has been very brave around the chase several times today. It hasn't always paid off for him, but he has shown, if nothing else, that he is very willing to leave nothing on the line. George Boothby flashing the lights towards one of the Hondas in front to get the blue flags out. And where on earth is... Oh, Robin Schaefer's just in front, excuse me. For a second, I thought Schaefer had disappeared from that battle with the Italian driver in Aston Martin. But thankfully, despite the several pieces of contact that those drivers have shared, nothing further, it seems, over the last couple of laps. The closest battle now on circuit, by the looks of it, is Robin Schwanker versus Marco Bischoff. And that McLaren may be a bit on the damaged side, but certainly does still have enough straight line speed, I think, to get... that is Tiepken and Pavel LeBush that has just swapped positions there. Flashing of the lights there from the BMW. So what happened late, moved towards that inside line from the Lamborghini, and leaving space very nicely was number 34 there. So I think all fair in that, but drops down 22nd position. So the Lamborghini making up a move. Three-way fight for P12 still raging on, and Karppinen bringing Duacop along with him. George Boothby, did he make a mistake on that lap? Did he get damage somewhere on his car? Yellow flag for Schwanker, who's in the wall, down through. Whereabouts is that? That is on the climb up towards the crest of Skyline there. So what on earth has happened to the McLaren? That is a bit of an unusual place to find, especially someone as talented as that number 5 car. Stranded, so that is on the exit of the cutting. Number 5 doesn't look like he's going to make any contact with Marco Bischoff. Oh, and he does! Bischoff runs wide on the exit. Schwanker tries to sneak out towards the inside, but Bischoff was absolutely up against the concrete. I don't think there was anything that he could do to go any further towards the right-hand side. Then, unfortunately, the gap just closing and swipes across the nose for McLaren and giving him some extra damage to deal with. And in the process, losing... in actual fact, no positions. So, and he will, by the sounds of it, if Marco Bischoff's fuel calculations have been a bit off, then he may, in fact, recover one of those. But that car is definitely going to be a bit on the more tricky side to drive. Karppinen still pushing on, trying to chase down George Boothby. Very even lap times between our top 3 last time around. Florian Duacop was the slowest one of that front group of 4, and Hutchinson actually very much on pace with our front runners, so could still sneak his way up to P4 potentially if Duacop has any issues in the closing stages. Matthias Kuhn close up to the back of Drexler. I think Drexler may have made a move on the German driver, excuse me, the Belgian driver of Matthias Kuhn not too long ago. Teemu Karppinen again out. Oh, it's a big moment through into a Skyline. Oh, and he just about keeps it together. How did Teemu Karppinen, quick hands and reactions in the cockpit of that car? George Boothby relieved not just the fact that he is able to breathe through a moment, but also the fact that that wasn't a more dramatic incident for the BMW and potentially wiping out George Boothby in the process as well. So now immediately goes from Carpenter being on the attack for P2 to trying now to just hang on to that final podium spot, with Florian Duacop locked onto the back of the BMW now. We'll have to see. Duacop seems to be struggling a little bit over the last couple of laps in terms of pace, and Carpenter, however he managed it, did keep it out of the wall, so won't be any extra damage on that car. Maybe a bit of extra wear and scrubbing on the tyres, as you'd expect. Yellow flag out for Tiepken, and again, that is on the exit of the cutting there, letting several drivers make their way by. I think hopefully he'll be able to rejoin okay in all of that. I saw Pavel Lebush getting involved in all that as well. Tiepken has now retired to the pits, I do believe. So what happened here for the Lamborghini drivers not long ago, since he made up a move? Oh dear, that was a monumental impact. Well, the Lamborghini would just seem to go completely straight on. Oh dear, I think that is a big technical failure, and unfortunately, Pavel Lebush in that as well got collected. I think that is a big hardware failure for the Lamborghini. Thankfully managed to get back to the pits to not cause any more issues, as Duacop down towards the inside in towards the cutting. Drag race now between Carpenter and the Mercedes side by side here is extremely difficult, but they're trying to make it work. Carpenter leaving nothing to chance. Contact with the wall, contact between the pair of them. How did Carpenter keep it pointing in a straight line again? They're still side by side through over the crest in towards McPhillips Park now, and Florian Duacop still has to concede the position. My goodness, Teemu Carpenter, take a bow for keeping that one all together. That was mighty car control in such a difficult part of the lap. Pavel Lebush, I think with the damage that he's gotten, that car is losing positions further down the order. Radix has got through, and I think the Honda just behind, in actual fact, the Honda just behind is a lapped car, so that is in full position. Jan Jog is a bit further down. Meanwhile, Ognodkov has just lost a position to Siggy Lentus in all of that. We'll have to check back up, though, towards our front runners, because Florian Duacop, 4 seconds now, the gap between Carpenter and Boothby, and that's how much time that lost for them. Duacop trying to keep his foot in it through the chase, and he's gone towards the outside very late on the brakes. It's a Mercedes, he's bringing Hutchinson into it, and Florian Duacop, has he managed to make that work? That is a huge late braking manoeuvre, and here comes Hutchinson as well now towards the outside to Murray's corner. Carpenter still on the inside, fighting tooth and nail for this podium spot. Hutchinson, it takes one position off Duacop on the undercuts through the final corner, and can he even go for another one? He's trying for it down the inside perhaps for Hutchinson, and Hutchinson out of nowhere is in P3. Can you believe it? Contact between Carpenter and Florian Duacop, it ends in tears this time around, and Carpenter can't keep it pointing in a straight line. Duacop then in towards P4, Hutchinson P3, Karekas and Whitehead benefiting that as well. Several drivers having to take evasive action, and Carpenter will eventually get going, but eventually that big battle unfortunately coming to an end, collecting half of the sponsors' boards as well in the process. Such a shame for it to end in that fashion, but my goodness, it did look like it was building up towards that, because those guys were absolutely battling like I've never seen before here at Bathurst, and leaving nothing on the table. Now Hutchinson finds himself in the podium spots. This is the consistency that this man has managed to bring. He just bides his time, he's clean in the races, and now finds himself in a chance of getting a podium position, and that would really help bring back his championship hopes. Pavel Lebush has lost a position to Jan Jog in all of that, with the damage that he is currently carrying. And Hutchinson now, of course, that car, that Mercedes that is hunting him down, is going to be a bit wounded with the amount of bits of contact. I imagine there's a good 2 or 3 seconds of damage on that car. But has Hutchinson got the straight line speed? 7 tenths now the gap, and that might be enough for the Ferrari, but it's whether or not in the long run Duacop has still got the pace to try to reel in the Ferrari that now finds its way in P3. Absolutely dramatic scenes here in the Pro Series, but we wouldn't expect anything else. And Duacop nowhere to be seen on that backstretch, so he really needs to get firmly into that slipstream if he wants a chance, because I think that car is missing a chunk. Oh, it's a yellow flag again for Robin Schwanker. So what's happened there for the McLaren? It's over in towards Skyline again, bumping all the way down, and a very small kiss of the wall for McLaren. Just about manages to keep that pointing in the right direction in the end, but certainly his day not going very well. Duacop, though, immediately back on to trying to make a move onto the Ferrari, And this is part of the circuit where that car is mighty, mighty quick. The torque of this Mercedes up the hill is absolutely rapid. LaBouche has brought out the yellow flag further down. I don't think anything. Oh dear, that's going to be awkward over the top of the hill there. And I think the BMW, oh, we didn't quite catch the beginning of that as Jonathan Clifford, who again has come across an incident. I think that's one of the Hondas. I can't quite see who that is that came across that as well. Thankfully, no further contact with all of those involved. Check back in. There's battle for the podium. Florian still hanging on to the back of the Ferrari, but that's where the Ferrari is quick. White flag again. That's just for slow moving LaBouche, who is having a very sad and sorrow time in that BMW. Has definitely had a bit of a well, whatever the opposite of a facelift is on that BMW. The nose of that car has had a major rework. Matthias Kuhn pushing on as LaBouche has just, I think he skipped across the grass there. The BMW just not turning in whatsoever, and the ET Sports car of Benny Vitter going through in the process. And I think that 34 car will have to go to the pits, and he does. Just nothing left to work with. But here comes Florian Duicot once more. He's hungry. He wants to get back on that podium position, and it does look like there's still enough straight line speed in that car. Oh, a little bit rubber banding towards the braking zone there, and Duicot almost straight into the back of the Canadian. But thankfully, no contact between those two, and Hutchinson, he's going to have to fight for this one if he wants to hold on to that podium. It'd be an amazing result for the Canadian driver if he does come away with that. That would certainly revitalise his championship hopes. But the number 19 car pushing on, as is Carpenter, who I think is trying to go for a move on Romagnoli. If we can see around the outside, he tries on Brun, the lapped car just behind. And Romagnoli, after all that battling with Robin Schaefer, now has another BMW to contend with Carpenter, who I imagine is only seeing red at the moment. And of course, there could be some post-race penalties from all of this. In actual fact, saying post-race penalties, I haven't even checked the stewards' inquiries. I haven't had a chance to look away from the cameras. We'll have to have a look. We do have live stewarding, of course, in this race. There could be still some post-race inquiries made that affect the final race positions, but we'll have a look through the penalties in just a moment. But Carpenter absolutely glued to the back of Romagnoli towards the outside of turn 2. He goes then in the Grip Packs engineering car, trying to make a zig. Oh, there's a yellow flag for Alexander Smolia. I think Smolia may have had an incident. Carpenter won't get through. And what has happened to Smolia? Smolia that was in the lead, but big margin over the grass. He goes. Huge moments for the number 7 car. Somehow he's kept it all going. But now George Boothby right in the frame, potentially to take victory away in the final 50 minutes. I don't know if there's any damage on the number 7. We'll have a look. It looks fairly spotless to me. I can't see anything too severe, so he might have just about got away scot-free with that one. With George Boothby, that'll certainly give him the extra push that I say that he needs. He's certainly been a multiple race winner before, so he certainly needs no encouragement to give it 110% to hunt down that race leader. But we saw it all go wrong. Florian Duicot when he was leading, and it seems like the same fate almost happening. Smolia with just a few extra minutes to go. Florian Duicot still unable to do anything. Carpenter may be able to make something happen on Romagnoli. The Aston Martin holding on strong for the time being. What is the pace difference between the BMW and the Aston? It's actually quite a chunk. The Aston usually fairly pacey in a straight line, but that BMW absolutely eating up the gap towards the back of that Aston, but the Finnish driver still having to stay behind for the time being. We'll check back on board with our battle for the podium positions, and I'll try to keep a bit of an eye on some of these penalties. So we've had 20 seconds of penalties dished out to the number 15 car as Duicot not giving me any chance to have a look because he's going towards the outside again. Does he think about moving towards the inside? Surely not. Almost very late on the entry. Hutchinson, though, not phased whatsoever by that late dive towards the inside line, and the Canadian holds on to P3. And look at the rear from the rear diffuser of that Ferrari. That is a mean-looking Mercedes that wants to get past. And of course, like I say, anything that happens could still be under effect of some other inquiries. Meanwhile, Carpenter and Romagnoli, I think, side by side towards turn 2. The Aston Martin has held on to that for the time being, though. Duicot still pushing the Ferrari along over the crest. So 20 seconds penalties were handed out to the number 15. I'll try to get through some of these bit by bit if I can. That was Steinbrenner that is currently sitting in P15. Number 7 car got 5 seconds of penalties. And that's Smolia. So Alexander Smolia, our race leader, has a 5-second penalty. So, or was that the reason? Well, that was earlier on in the race, I think. So maybe that was the reason why he lost so much time in the pit stop. So I still think he has the net effective race lead. I thought for a second that could be enough to hand it George Boothby, but I think that could explain the reason as to why that George Boothby and everyone else was able to gain so much into his race lead at the stop. So I think that these are still effective track positions for those cars. And that was for causing a collision. So he did obviously make up many overtakes in the opening phase of the race. We didn't quite catch all of them. Carpenter back to get on the brakes. Oh, the big moment for the finish driver. And again, having to have the quickest hands on the grid today. And unfortunately, they weren't quick enough. And this time around, it's a chunk more damage than he's had on that car before. He will keep on going. And he was carrying so much more speed than Romagnoli. I think he was hoping that that door would open on the inside line towards turn 21 there, but it just never came. And unfortunately, Max Sebastian Crow now brings out the yellow flag, and that's at turn 2. Absolute chaos in the final 10 minutes. Excuse me, that's a Forest elbow. And he's just run completely deep on the brakes. Like I say, it's a double braking zone into there, and he's gone over the crest, tried to stay out of the wall, and in doing so has tagged the one on the right-hand side. Thankfully, though, I think has stayed out of everyone else's way. Florian Duacop has also dropped back now to a second away from Hutchinson, so I'm not sure if a Mercedes has anything left to contend with. Try and take that one away. And whilst we have a moment's peace, we'll try to have a look through some of these other penalties have been dished out. Car 31, 5-second penalty as well. For that is for Igor has just brought a white flag. I think that was him allowing one of the Veloce Esports cars through. Car number 31, that was Siggy Lentis, got a 5-second penalty. A drive-through for car number 23 for causing collisions. That was definitely must have been on the severe side. And car number 23, I think, has left the server because I can't see them on my leaderboard anymore. Car number 9 has a 10-second penalty for an unsafe rejoin, and that belongs to Matthias Kuhn, so the Belgian driver. That unfortunately affecting, I think, his race a bit earlier on. He might have served that in the pits. Car number 25, 10-second penalty as well for an unsafe rejoin. That was to Poznikov. I think that was in that chaotic incident over the crest in the dipper and through the S's when he ended up collecting Ognodikov. And that is all for now. Though we may be about to see another penalty come through very shortly. So I'll wait for confirmation on that and see how that plays out. But for the first time, and I think this entire race, we don't have two cars that are absolutely toe-to-toe and battling for position. We've got gaps of the smallest is a second between Hutchinson and Florian Duacop. But Duacop, ever since he dropped a little bit back, maybe those just small taps that he had with Karppinen affecting the performance of that car. And again, I think he did. Did you just have a little bit of a collision with the wall there? I'll try to grab it back on the replay. Coming over the crest there, it looked like he may have done. Yes, he did. Little bit of a clash there with the wall, and it's small build-up of damage like that do accumulate, and they will affect your race pace. Someone that's had an almost faultless drive is Alexander Smolia in the number 7 car. Gap back up to 3.2 seconds now over George Boothby. And has managed to recover after that very scary incident, but he's got just under 7 minutes left to go. Won't be wanting to have a moment like that again. And the penalty that I was waiting on confirmation for has come through. It's a 10-second penalty for car number 19. Oh, it's yellow flag for Marco Bischoff through McPhillamys there. And Marco Bischoff, again, another one of the Porsches, having an issue on that little small jump on the crest towards that corner then, unsettling the car and then losing as a result. Robin Schwanker also brought out the white flag for a moment. I don't think anything too severe for the McLaren. But the number 19 car, that is Florian Duacop in P4. So Hutchinson now, I think, because of that incident with but Duacop and Karppinen. Hutchinson now, whilst he'll obviously want to take it on track, and he's done it in fine form to get that Ferrari up into P3, he will be able to just relax a little bit relative to before, because that 10-second time penalty for Duacop means he doesn't quite have to hold it on track anymore. Meanwhile, Robin Schwanker, who is running heavily wounded under pressure now from Steinbrenner in the number 15 car. McLaren almost going off on the exit. Steinbrenner trying to fight back now. He's got the cutback, he's got the run, but he has to go towards the outside line, then in towards Murray's corner, then into the final turn. McLaren shutting the door on the exit, but we know the BMW is quick in a straight line. And he's actually already gaining towards turn 1. Schwanker outside defending like his life depends on it. I think the German driver will just wait for the opportunity on the exit. And now that slipstream up the hill, I don't think there's going to be anything the McLaren can do. He will force him towards the outside line. But as we go on board the McLaren, see that BMW start to pull alongside on the left-hand side. I say that, fighting back, the McLaren actually stronger than I thought it was going to be. Oh, a little bit of a wiggle there. Steinbrenner trying to hold it around the outside. Of course, his car not running anywhere near as damaged. Schwanker gives a little bit of a squeeze on the run towards the cutting, but the number 15 car does take the position and goes into 14th place. So great stuff there from him, and I think Schwanker just unable to really do anything. Florian Duacop has managed to gain back a little bit of time on to Hutchinson over the last couple of laps. It was Hutchinson actually that was the fastest car on track on the last lap, only fractionally faster than Florian Duacop. And see how they fare this time around. To a 1.4 for Smollier, to a 1.2 for Boothby, to a 1.1 for Hutchinson, 2:07 for Duacop. So that 10-second penalty, he'll be ruining that mistake, because that really does take him out of contention for this. And also, that has other effects as well, because there are very tight margins with Luke Whitehead and Grantis Korekis. So Luke Whitehead within 4 seconds of Duacop, Korekis 6.2 behind. So it's 10.2 seconds between Duacop and Korekis. If Duacop and Hutchinson do scrap, they will lose time, and Duacop will actually likely end up losing an extra position. So if he does want to make the move, he needs to get it done quickly, he needs to get it done cleanly, and he needs to push on away. Sebastian Krohn dropping a position. That's an unconventional area to lose a spot. Is he going to make a mistake? He does tag the wall through the S's, and it was Benny Vitter says thank you very much. Takes quite a wide line through there and sneaks his way through up into 22nd position. I think Manos Gerardis as well is also going to get involved in this. I do just need to check for a moment, because Florian Duacop again looking very pacey through the middle part of the lap, as Manos Gerardis down towards the inside into the chase. Then number 17 car gets that one done easily, as he looks to try to recover some time in this race. And Florian Duacop now, for the first time in a while, the closest he has been. And Hutchinson, if he's got a wise head on those shoulders, surely he won't fight this too much. He doesn't need to. He'll see the 10-second penalty in the race. We can't see it from our screens. Hutchinson over to the left-hand side, and he does allow the Mercedes through. And it's Hutchinson making decisions like that that have kept him in such a strong position. And it's mistakes like that that Florian does not want to make, because, oh, and a bit of a tag. Oh dear, that's gone very wrong. Compromise on the exit. And Hutchinson just, I think, a little bit of netcode, unfortunately, tagging the back of Florian there. And that might well be enough for both Whitehead and Korekis to benefit through the penalty that Florian Duacop still has to have. That was very unfortunate there, and I want to check it on the replay, but there's a chance that Duacop could make something happen on the run up here, and I don't want to miss that. So I think from looking at it at the time, it looked like Hutchinson maybe just caught the back, but Florian Duacop was very all over the place now, and Duacop looking towards that inside line, and Hutchinson isn't defending it. I think he is going to let him through. He had no intention to ever fight it in the first place, so I don't think that, you know, that contact between the pair of them was extremely unfortunate. We'll see. I'm sure it will come under Stewart's review. We haven't got long in this race, so it may be something that gets applied post-race, but Florian Duacop was very out of shape on the exit of 22 there, and I think Hutchinson, potentially with a little bit of netcode as well, may have just been caught off guard, because quite clearly he did not want to battle. But Florian Duacop now only has about 9 seconds to Korekis, so Korekis, crucially, in terms of his championship, would benefit and obviously Whitehead as well. So as it would stand, with that penalty applied, your finishing positions would be Smollier. Excuse me, actually I need to check further down because Gerardis, I think, has just got past Benny Vitter. Another move for the Greek driver. Around the outside he goes in towards the chase. Makes that one stick very easily in the end. Barnabas Fazekas has brought out a white flag, but I don't think he has had too much of an incident. I'm not entirely sure. Final lap of the race then. This will be after this one. So Alexander Smollier approaching the final corner now. Hutchinson was glued to the back of Duakov for a moment there, but not looking to make the move. He does not need to risk anything in all of that. And I think, looking at it, so that incident is currently under review. We'll see if we get a decision from the stewards before the end of this race, and we'll see how that gets passed through, and no further action taken, which I think is a fairly reasonable call in all of that, because although we didn't quite catch being able to see it again, it did look to me that Duakov was all out of shape on the exit, and I don't think Hutchinson had any intention of making contact there. He didn't even try to fight the original move, so just a bit unfortunate. But that incident and squabble has, I believe, cost Duakov an extra position, because the penalty that he carries over from the contact with Karppinen has meant that he will likely lose that extra place to Grantas Karekas. Do need to check on where Smollier is. He's coming through that very tricky part of the circuit for the final time. He had an incident, we know earlier on, no such issue in that part of the circuit, and his gap already back up to 5 seconds, so that is the pace that he has had today. White flag out for Matthias Kuhn. I'm not sure if he had an issue. Marco Bischoff still running in 13th. I'm not sure if he is in fuel-saving mode or not, though. And Smollier is pushing on. And also, in fact, just checking that Duakov's pace here. Oh, it's going to be close between him and Karekas, actually, because Duakov is putting in a very quick final lap. And there is definitely a chance that he could carry enough of a gap towards the end to actually hold off Karekas. So it's not over and done with just yet. But I have to say, this man that on your screen right now, the number 7 car, Alexander Smollier, he started in 11th place. Within 10 minutes, he was battling in the top 5. He has absolutely floored the rest of this incredibly talented grid today. And Alexander Smollier is going to be the king of the mountain here in Season 9 around Bathurst after 90 minutes of racing and almost flawless drive. George Boothby will take P2. Couldn't convert pole into win. Florin Duakov on track will finish in P3. Hutchinson just behind, who will take that podium place. Luke Whitehead will finish in 5th position. And Karekas, let's see the gaps on these final laps. It's going to be close. So 6.2 seconds, the margin. Doing some quick maths, as Karppinen just brought out a white flag. I don't think that's for anything too severe, I don't believe. So by the skin of his teeth, Karekas has, I believe, managed to jump Duakov when all those positions end up playing through. This man, Teemu Karppinen, has had a very busy day, and he will be fuming after showing such strong pace at several points in this race. It did not play out the way that he would have wanted. Mikoski and Samir take 11th and 12th. Marco Bischoff did manage to finish the end, so maybe running in the tow for so long and managed to just about drag enough fuel in that car. Some final battles going on. I think Benny Vitter got overtaken by Manos Dradis not too long ago, and Dradis obviously had that incident during the race that lost him a chunk of time. It was a really strong performance and day up until that point for the Greek driver. Jan Drexler bringing out the white flag for a moment. I thought for a moment he'd run out of fuel across the line, but thankfully does get across in 18th position. Matthias Kuhn, though, was not too far behind in the end, as then the likes of Jan Jog will make their way through. Radix just in front of him, rounding out the top 20. White flag for Sebastian Krohn, who has had a very busy day himself. Not what the number 36 car would have wanted. Unfortunately, has had several incidents and has really been a victim of the mountain during this race. But that will be it then for Bathurst. What an absolutely incredible race. As always, just would not expect anything else. The Pro Series is always bringing such absolutely fantastic action, and that has worked wonders for us today in terms of our viewing pleasure. But Alexander Smolyar, a dominant race victory in this one, and he has just shown the rest of the field how it is done around this very tricky circuit. And race results then already through. So there you have it. So Smolyar takes the victory. Boothby takes second with Hutchinson in third. And confirmation there, Duacop did finish down in 6th position. So that squabbling did cost him. Addison in 7th place. Another big mover. Robin Schaefer taking 10 positions up to P8. Romagnoli and Karppinen rounding out the top 10. And then we had the likes of Makoski, Fock, Bischoff, Steinbrenner, Schwanker, Ferris, DeCampo, Drexler, Kuhn and Radix towards the top 20. Yog, Gerardis, Vitter, Krohn, Lentus, Fazakas, Ognodikov, who had a busy time in that one as well, got caught up in some unfortunate incidents there towards then LeBouche, Bellasan and Clifford towards 30th. Pozniakov, Brun and Pleskov, the last of your finishers, and unfortunately 7 DNFs from that race, with the mountain claiming many a victim, which is not surprising because despite the incredible talents of these drivers, with a track like Bathurst, it is always bound to be a tricky one to stay on top of. But the man that mastered it on the day, Alexander Smolyar, an absolutely sensational victory that he put on in all of that. We'll see if we've got anyone for some interviews. If we are lucky, would be good, as my game crashes in the background just as we finish up. It doesn't look like we've got anyone that is hanging about for any interviews, which is a big shame. Of course, if you do have contact with any of the drivers in the championship, then do feel free to give them a nudge and join for an interview. It's always amazing to speak to them, get an idea of what it is like inside the cockpit of these cars, especially around such an incredible circuit like Mount Panorama. But what a finish, and crucially the likes of Hutchinson getting that podium position. Before that disconnect, Hutchinson was leading this championship, and he was leading this championship by putting performances in exactly like that. Consistent, keeping out of trouble, and extracting the maximum out of that Ferrari at every possible occasion. And with the likes of Jardier having what will likely be one of his drop scores due to a no-show stay. Marco Bischoff having another torrid time, and really that's going to make life very difficult in the long run. Whitehead, Korekas, reasonable results for them in the Porsches today, and then George Boothby, of course, very much a strong result for him, so that will certainly tighten things up at the top of the standings. But Hutchinson really has only had one poor race so far in terms of his results, and that was primarily in the form of that disconnect. So that could very much see him still firmly be in contention for the championship. We should also, after this race, have a more clear representation of everybody in this championship for this top division, as I do believe Luke Whitehead will then be moved across to this main tier. So we'll have to double check my understanding of all of that when we arrive at the round for next week, which, speaking of which, we are going to be heading to the 7th round of Season 9, which will be taking place at Brands Hatch. So we will be back in Britain, and that is going to be an interesting one indeed. I know around a lot of the British GT circuits, the Ferraris tend to run quite well there, so maybe we could see Hutchinson go from being Mr. Consistent in the races to actually maybe challenging a bit more for a race win. And of course, I imagine that the Porsches, and very much likely the Hondas as well, will also be on fire there too. So I have to see how they all fare in all of that. It does look like, though, that there won't be any interviews, unfortunately, from anybody in this race. So that will be it for today's action. But my goodness, what an evening of action it has been. 90 minutes of Bathurst, almost non-stop action throughout. and just putting on a fantastic setting and playing host to one of the best races I think that we have had in the Pro Series over the last couple of seasons. Amazing stuff and an absolutely dominant performance overall, besides that one small error from Alexander Smolia. And that's a big statement there from that number 7 car in this championship. So that will be it then for today. If you have enjoyed what you have been watching this evening and you fancy getting involved in some of this yourself, then do head over to the lowfuelmotorsport.com website, get yourself registered, get yourself a license, work your way through the ranks, and you could start competing with some of these guys on track and going for some very, very nice prizes in this championship. And also, of course, there is the daily racing, and if ACC isn't quite the platform for you, then R Factor 2 is also now on LFM as well, with the likes of touring cars, sports cars, single-seaters, you name it. And it has likely got something there that will cover your racing desires. And look forward, hopefully seeing as many of you next week watching Brands Hatch as possible. And of course, if you want to join the community as well in a more direct aspect, then the Discord server is a great way to mingle with other people that are loving sim racing and motorsport as much as all of you wonderful people in the chat that have been supporting the stream tonight. It's been absolutely fantastic having you all here, and look forward to hopefully having as many of you as possible next week at Brands Hatch. But for tonight then, it's goodbye.